rumblings of an economic crash are no longer distant thunder over the horizon. They are the ground shaking beneath our feet, with hard data screaming the warning that the globalists and central bankers refuse to admit. RV sales have collapsed. Barbecue prices skyrocket as cattle disappears.
Reality is we have too much capacity for processing for the number of cattle we have right now. The packing industry's been running at a loss for at least a year and a half, maybe longer.
Bill Pauley from the Quad Cities Chamber of Commerce says in the last 4 years, the number of cattle in the country has declined by around 10%, leading to closures of processing plants like in Joslin.
They feel constrained and not able to raise prices because consumers are sensitive to price.
Those declines then lead to more issues for cattle farmers like Lyman.
It also affects how many we have available to buy to feed, and by extension how many are available for the packing industry to utilize as well.
American Express is slashing credit limits even for customers with perfect scores and zero balances. And even strippers aren't making any money. Clear signs the consumer economy is imploding from the bottom up.
The market's to a church with a casino attached. And people can move between the church and casino, and I would say there are more people in the church and more people in the casino. But the casino's gotten very attractive to people. You know, if you're buying one-day options or selling them, I mean, that's not investing, it's not speculating, it's gambling, just totally.
The Bank of Japan has already war-gamed the nightmare scenario of the dollar losing its reserve status as creditors lose trust. This isn't some random market correction. It's the deliberate unraveling of the old system so the new one can be forced down our throats.
6G surveillance system will not only be able to see you through walls, I mean literally they'll be able to see movement signatures through walls because the 6G infrastructure will be so dense. There's so many relay stations with the 6G that they'll have an active surveillance grid where like literally real time seeing where every single individual is, particularly in major cities.
That your country is falling, India is taking over,
and I'm going to stop that. I'm going to
stop. Do your best. Do your best. I'm going to become a debater. I'm going to take his job. I'm going to debate everything. It's going to be great.
What follows that crash will be far worse than empty shelves or worthless dollars. Out of the ashes will rise the global credit prison, a digital gulag modeled directly on China's social credit nightmare. And the elites have been training for it in plain sight. For example, invite-only classes at Stanford, attended by the likes of Bill Gates' daughter, have focused on controlling society and ruling the world.
See, even the media doesn't get what this really is. It's not a class. It's a local command ship, just like the Chinese have their Confucian societies in the U.S. Bill Gates' daughter, the Communist Chinese, Bill Gates' daughter reportedly took secret Stanford class on how to rule the world. So she's Dick Dastardly, and old Gates is literally the equivalent of a modern Hitler. And so we've fixed it right here for you.
Every purchase, every post, every opinion, step out of line, question the narrative.
We are not a nation of Muslims. We are a nation of Christians. We are one nation under God, indivisible, the God of the Bible, the God of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Refuse the jab, listen to the wrong music, and your score plummets.
It's cool to get on the computer, but don't let the computer get on you. It's cool. It's cool to use the computer. Don't let the computer use you. You all saw The Matrix.
This is the awful truth set in motion that they don't want you to see. The crash is the battering ram, and the global credit prison is the cage they're building to lock us all inside. John Bound reporting for the Alex Jones Network at alexjoneslive.com.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Diamond Report Live. How about that for an intro? Yeah, don't let the computer use you. I like that. You can use a computer, but don't let the computer use you. That's really good advice from one of my all-time favorite artists. Anyway, hello and welcome. It's Doug Diamond here. It's the Diamond Report Live, 9:05 p.m. on August 23rd, 2026. Here we are yet again. Yeah, I hope you guys had a good week this week and got a lot to look at tonight. So again, we'll see how far we can get. Hopefully we can get through everything. I don't know. It's hard to say. It is 9:06 p.m., so we'll probably go at least until 12 o'clock my time. So that's a good solid 3 hours, I would think. So got lots to look at tonight. So thought we'd start with the HalTurnerRadioShow.com. He's always got some good news, breaking news type things. It's usually always bad news, actually, but good access as far as the content goes. Updated 7:31 p.m. earlier this evening, Eastern Time. Iran war likely to resume within days. Haven't they been saying that pretty much? I think we've been saying that on, I don't know, almost all these shows lately. The Iran war is likely to resume. The government of Iran believes kinetic hostilities in the Persian Gulf region are likely to resume in the coming days. So this is Iran stating this. Iran's waiting for the U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent to announce the new U.S. economic warfare, quote-unquote, against Iran. Bessent is scheduled to announce these new efforts tomorrow, Monday, August 24th. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Once the new methods are announced, Iran has made clear that any country that joins the U.S. effort will be considered to be engaging in an act of war upon Iran. That does make sense, and will be brutally attacked militarily. Then, specifically mentioning Persian Gulf countries, Iran said not one drop of oil will flow from the Persian Gulf, triggering a global energy crisis and economic disaster. I think Trump's already triggered that, don't you? Sure seems that way. Bessent threatens to turn China, the UAE, Turkey, Iraq, the EU, India, Pakistan, Russia, Afghanistan, and Oman, Iran's top 10 trading partners, into global pariahs. Yeah, we'll see if that actually happens. The alternative for those who tether themselves to Tehran is the foreclosure of any path to lasting prosperity. Illicit finance will flourish, as it so often does, where confidence has collapsed. Any nation that serves as a financial artery of a withering regime should expect to share in its isolation. To become a sanctuary for terror is to become, in the eyes of the United States, a global pariah. Saudi Arabia, port of Yanbu on the Red Sea, is already known to be one of the primary targets for Iran. To halt the estimated 5.5 million barrels of oil per day flowing from there, the Oman port of Fujairah is known to be a second major port facility shipping oil, which has also been previously named as a target by Iran. While the conflict with Iran has been going on, countries around the world have torn through their national and commercial crude oil reserves. Some countries have already run out. Others, including the U.S., are close to running out. The price of diesel fuel in the up in the Northeast is about $6 a gallon. So yeah, it is skyrocketing everywhere. And then his update for this evening, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says war is about to enter a new phase. Iran responded to Johnson's remarks almost immediately. This is their response. The third wave of the war is approaching, and this round will be the fiercest. The UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Israel will participate in it, and most likely this round will be the reason for the United States' withdrawal from the region, unleashing a wave of change in American society. So, them sound like fighting words, as they used to say. I don't know. Of course, they're a long time ago picked the target that they wanted, and that was to defeat Iran in any way. And of course, Israel is the one calling the shots here. So we'll see what actually happens. But lots of strong words, of course. And, they're setting up a global war for us all. So isn't that wonderful? Let's take a look at, we've got a couple articles from this site. We've got one more here tonight. So let's look at this one from Hal's site as well. This one is, I guess, really more of a follow-up from one that I mentioned several weeks back. I think it was pre-FIFA we were talking about this. You remember the people coming out of the manhole covers in New York City? Well, it's happening again. Men emerged from manhole covers in New York City. This is dated earlier today. But the video is from August 21st, 22nd, so just a few days ago. Video below shows men emerging from underground out of manhole covers at 4:19 a.m. in New York City. It appears to be taking place on August 21 into August 22. So let me mute this just because it's just got some guy talking here. But you can see this is 4:19 a.m. and you got people with suspenders and no shirts and headlamps coming up out of the manhole covers in New York. There have previously been similar videos showing similar scenes elsewhere in New York City. Viral news, New York City on social media platform X deserves the credit for posting this revealing situation back in May. Then this is one of the clips from before. It says these are clearly not authorized persons. They're not repair crews. They're not maintenance people. No one knows what such people are doing underground. It seems logical to believe they are up to no good. One has to ask if they're planting bombs or setting up destructive devices for an attack upon New York City. Well, they just have total free access to it, so I guess why not? I mean, apparently people are asking for it by not paying a bit of attention. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting, a follow-up on the story from before. It does seem to still be going on. It had nothing to do with FIFA, apparently. People were guessing back then, I guess it was back in May or so, that perhaps there was going to be some bomb or something go off when the FIFA World Cup events were happening, but of course that didn't happen, so I don't know. Maybe something else going on, but whatever it is, it's probably not good, is my guess. All right, need to know.news. Got a few articles from there. Catherine Austin Fitts always puts out good information. Has warned that depopulation is used to change the economy. Tucker Carlson agreed with Matt Walsh and wrote that the Trump administration should work on reducing the cost of food and other necessities rather than engaging in the war in Iran. He criticized Ben Shapiro for trying to sell the idea that it is unpatriotic to oppose wars for Israel. Tucker made a shocking comparison between the baby boomer generation in 1969 and young people today regarding the cost of living and health. He illustrated that those in power hate America and have caused its destruction through opioid addiction, open borders, inflation, war, massive debt, etc. Catherine Austin Fitts made a chilling declaration that a small group in power aims to reduce the population in order to make it more controllable. Of course, that's what they're doing. And it says, Catherine observed that the war is used to control the domestic population. She explained that the way to change the economy of a democratic republic to an oligarchy system is to consolidate wealth through debt and reduce the general population to a group of people who are much easier to control. Lower life expectancy eases pension funds and retirement system obligations. And of course, that all started with COVID, didn't it? It didn't start, but it certainly was accelerated through then. The COVID crisis. She warned that the technical control grid and programmable digital money is coming. And then the interview is embedded here. Should you guys want to check that out? She always has really good information. Been following her off and on for a long time. Need to know.news. Next article. American troops aboard U.S. aircraft carrier ship blockading Iran revolt against Israel. We've kind of mentioned that here and there on this show. USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier ship is currently deployed in the northern Arabian Sea as part of its mission to conduct maritime security operations and enforce a blockade against Iran. This article is dated the 19th, so I think they are working on this issue, but who knows. The ship is housing roughly 5,000 sailors and Marines and has been actively deployed for 9 months. The normal deployment period is from 6 to 9 months. The extended deployment has raised concerns regarding the well-being of the sailors and their families. The USS Abraham Lincoln has faced food shortages, broken plumbing, exhaustion, and mental health concerns during its extended deployment, with some sailors reportedly attempting to jump overboard. The carrier has been at sea for more than 250 days, without a port call in over 200 days. USS George Washington is en route to relieve it following public pressure. So that is that's where it's been left at this point. USS George Washington en route to relieve it in following public pressure. Then here's a video here. James Lee breaks down the growing push toward a ground invasion in Iran, exposing how viral clips show USS service members speaking out against fighting Israel's battles, while politicians and media voices quietly lay the groundwork for draft expansion and boots on the ground. And then here's a video here with Ben Swan as well. He explains that reports of food and supply shortages and sailors trying to jump ship, literally, from the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier ship have been contested by the Trump administration that claims conditions on the carrier are good. Of course they say that. They're not on it. We've seen videos. Many people have seen video clips being shared around. The conditions are not good. So hopefully these men who are giving so much will be listened to, and they'll try to come up with an answer here, but it doesn't seem like Trump administration really wants to very badly, does it? Need to know.news. Another article I found. New Mexico fines Meta $942 million as a public nuisance, quote unquote, related to child safety. A judge in Santa Fe ordered Facebook and Instagram's parent company Meta to pay a total of $942 million in fines for creating a public nuisance over its handling of child safety on its social media platforms and being a significant, quote-unquote, contributor to the state's teen mental health crisis. The ruling found that Meta intentionally used features such as endless scrolling, autoplay, notifications, and content recommendations to keep users, especially teenagers, on its platforms longer. The historic ruling asserted that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act does not preclude the state's public nuisance claim. Until now, Section 230 has allowed social media to host user content without facing publisher liability. Yeah. It says, note that Section 230 was used as a shield during the Biden administration when it was accused of coercing social media platforms to censor speech that they disapproved of, such as COVID and the 2020 election that critics assert was stolen. Yeah, we finally only just got past that a year or two ago. So anyway, New American is where this article is, but it's linked to from needtoknow.news. So I do find that very interesting. They are a public nuisance for sure, but what will actually be done? I don't know. I don't know if there are other states that will join in as well, fining Meta. Would be interesting. Why are male cattle lactating? Hormones, feedlots, and estrogenic exposure. This is a needtoknow.news article as well. This reminds me of the old Alex Jones-ism, that they're making the freaking frogs gay. You guys remember that? Well, this is the cows, I guess. Researchers evaluated more than 20,000 finished cattle from 33 feedlots and found that approximately 17% of the male cattle that they examined were lactating. While the researchers did not establish the cause, they did raise one possibility. Excess body fat as greater amounts of body fat can provide greater capacity for estrogen production. The author of this article proposed that in addition to excess body fat, I don't think it's that, do you? These external factors are also adding to the problem. Hormonal growth promotants, phytoestrogens, estrogenic mycotoxins, agricultural pesticides used in growing their feed, pest control pesticides and chemicals used in and around their feedlot. It says, note that we do not endorse any diet or food system, but just report the news. Do your own due diligence. Why are male cattle lactating? So that is very strange. It's the first I've heard of this. But it does kind of make sense when you throw in all of the chemicals not only are the cattle exposed to, but that every living thing is being exposed to. Estrogen mimickers and so on and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot here on this article. Looking to see where this article was sourced from. Goes way down to here. Nourish Food Club. NourishFoodClub.com is where it's coming from. Anyway, needtoknow.news. Pretty interesting. They do find some good articles to post for sure. We've got some technocracy.news as usual as well. So let's look at the first one of those. A couple of them are connected, although this one is sort of a separate thing. Flock Safety extends surveillance capabilities as Sam Altman hides in the shadows. Flock Safety received a startup grant from Y Combinator in 2017 when Sam Altman was president. Again, Flock Safety we're talking about here. Y Combinator bills itself as a high-touch startup accelerator that coaches early founders, connects them with a dense investor and alumni network, and prepares them to raise institutional capital. Altman always picked high-probability, disruptive companies. Without Altman, Flock would never have been picked by Andreessen Horowitz for major funding. Interesting. So Sam Altman, the guy that's running, or to some degree, involved in ChatGPT. So interesting that he was involved with Flock Safety. I did not realize that previously. So it says vehicle surveillance giant Flock Safety has told the public for years that its technology cannot recognize, identify, or track individuals, quote unquote. It has now built a system that does both. An artificial intelligence tool for police that can identify drivers and track vehicles by their patterns of movement alone. Wired magazine has learned. Drawing on a network of cameras that logs the movements of drivers in more than 6,000 communities, the tool can pick out potential witnesses by how often their cars pass through a neighborhood, or surface a driver's associates from the cameras that they pass together. Because the system also reaches police case files, 911 dispatch logs, and commercial identity records, those plates can be turned into names, home addresses, and relatives. It can search for people in an area drawn on a map based on nothing more than a physical description. The software, originally called Night Shift and more recently renamed OS Investigate, ships with 69 pre-written prompts that offers can select, review, or edit and then submit to the AI system. Officers can also input prompts of their own. Wow. Anyway, it's getting a little crazy out there with all the Flock stuff going on.
There's a lot of debate right now about these license plate scanners that are going up across the country. They're called Flock cameras. People are worried that the police might misuse them. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
Or what's your stance?
Well, it's being studied right now. You know, you have pros and cons, right? It's being studied right now. We'll have an answer sort of as to our views on it over the next couple of weeks.
In a chilling expansion of America's already exponentially sprawling surveillance grid, networks like Flock Safety have been revealed as the tip of a far more invasive spear.
Where is this place?
I just told you.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, I have you on camera.
Okay.
You taking a package and walking away. Is there any reason why you would have done that?
Nope.
You were in town from 11:52 until 12:09 exactly. Like I said, nothing gets in or out of the town without us knowing about it.
52 a.m.?
Yes.
The second. See, I need someone to know this.
And here, well, I can show you. And here's when you left at 12:09. That's when you left town. It is her. It is 100%. It is locked in. There is zero doubt. I wouldn't have come here unless I was 100% sure. 100%. It is certain. It is on video. You're obviously welcome to go to court.
We're assuming he had to see in the vehicle at some capacity to see that I looked like that individual, because he was providing nothing else to say, oh, here I see you getting out of the truck, and here I see this person stealing. He didn't have any of that. He strictly had, this is your vehicle, and then this looks like you. Well, how did you put that together?
So this police officer is using Flock cameras to argue you committed a crime, and you have all of your own cameras to prove that you didn't commit the crime.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch the Ring camera footage of the woman who actually stole the package, it is 1,000% not you. You can easily see that.
Yes.
Flock cameras too.
A leaked presentation showed the company pitching state officials on integrating live dash cam feeds from hundreds of thousands of Uber, Lyft, and delivery vehicles systems that already generate trillions of high-resolution images of license plates and vehicle details into its national database. Had the partnership proceeded, fixed roadside cameras would have been joined by a mobile swarm of more than 350,000 roaming sensors, filling every gap in urban and regional coverage in near real time and creating an unbroken real-time map of every vehicle's movements. The constitutional implications of this architecture have only grown sharper. A recent 6-3 Supreme Court decision held that police requests for the location of every phone near a given place and time, known as geofence warrants, constitute a Fourth Amendment search requiring probable cause. While the ruling addressed phone data rather than cameras, its logic directly implicates Flock's networks. A single camera snapshot may be fleeting, but a dense, searchable web of linked sensors functions as a continuous tracker of public movements. Records already show these databases are queried hundreds of thousands of times by agencies far beyond the local police who install them.
So here's a Flock camera pointed directly at the schoolyard, monitoring where each kid walks, how they get home, if there's an adult with them, which car is picking them up. And this camera is owned by a friend of Jeffrey Epstein who shared over 2,000 emails. How are you guys not outraged about this? A pedophile is recording our children and tracking them.
Cameras have been documented pointed directly at schoolyards and playgrounds, raising acute concerns when one of Flock's major investors is known to have exchanged more than 2,400 emails with Jeffrey Epstein, and another investor is linked to an Israeli cyber firm capable of hacking security cameras and manipulating video footage. Big tech oligarchs, now inextricably intertwined with the intelligence community and military through contracts and political donations, are pouring resources into data centers worldwide, not merely for commercial AI, but to accelerate their transhumanist vision to merge humanity with machines. The result is an overzealous, hyperactive, illegal surveillance state that no longer merely watches citizens in the name of safety, but seeks to render every movement predictable, controllable, and ultimately enforceable. John Bound reporting for the Alex Jones Network at alexjoneslive.com.
Says Flock has been building the AI system while under scrutiny for how police have abused the cameras it already runs. Texas officers searched more than 83,000 cameras across the country last year while looking for a woman who had a self-administered abortion. According to search logs first obtained by 404 Media, a recent Washington Post analysis found 50 officers charged with or accused of misusing plate reader systems, 26 of them to track wives, girlfriends, exes, and women that they want to meet. Illinois regulators found last August that Flock had violated state law by running a now paused pilot program that handed Customs and Border Protection access to cameras in the state. Yeah, not to mention the ability for Israel and other countries to tap into their systems and access driver information on Americans. Isn't that lovely? Anyway, that was the first of 3 Technocracy.news articles for tonight. The next 2 are somewhat connected, so we'll take a look at each one of these. And Israel and India corridor is the biggest Middle East story that no one is talking about. Well, we've mentioned it on this show before, but not really in a whole lot of detail. This is the most astute article about the IMAC corridor that I've seen, Patrick Wood is stating here, and that from a seasoned policy analyst. It is blunt and thoughtful. There are obstacles to the IMAC corridor running through Israel, not the least of which is Saudi Arabia digging its heels in. Saudi/Israeli normalization becomes a make-or-break deal for Israel, and the difference between huge investment flows and being shut out of world trade altogether. So one thing he was positing here, and I think it's the next article we're going to look at, which is really just an intro piece. one thing he states is that it was never really about the ability of Iran to not have nuclear weapons, that was just a cover, and that really wasn't part of the main goal of the Trump administration. And in fact, the actual goal was to take over the Strait of Hormuz. And, one would definitely argue that they have not really done that quite yet and probably don't have the ability to do so. But he makes a really good point that it's really more about this IMEC corridor. And if you can see it here on the screen, it would run from Mumbai, India, right here through the Strait of Hormuz area to Dubai in the UAE, and then goods would be taken by rail from there through UAE and across Saudi Arabia into Israel, into the port at Haifa, and then transferred over to Greece and then to Europe. So therefore then bypassing Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, essentially. So that is kind of what they're getting at in a nutshell. The other article on this that really describes that a little bit more thoroughly is this one. Trump wants the Strait of Hormuz as a U.S. territory. IMEC is why. On August 14th, Trump stood in front of a law enforcement crowd at the David S. Mack Center for Training and Intelligence in Garden City, Long Island. Trump told them that after defeating Iran, quote unquote, he would declare that the Strait of Hormuz is a territory of the United States. The Strait of America, question mark. Yeah, that is, that does seem to be where we are at this point. So I don't, he can call it what he wants. Obviously, everyone knows that he has no control. The U.S. has no control over the strait at this point. Anyway, I've got a few Revolver articles as well. This has been a big story this week. The Lindsay Clancy case is the downfall of womankind. I don't know if you guys have been following this or not. It says, folks, there's something very dark and disturbing happening around the Lindsay Clancy trial. And no, we're not here to laugh at women on TikTok, sneer at struggling mothers, or pretend postpartum mental illness isn't real. It's much darker than all that. Lindsay Clancy has admitted that she murdered her 3 young children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, inside their Massachusetts home in January 2023 when her husband left the house. Now, what the jury must decide is whether she was criminally responsible when she strangled them to death. Both sides agree that she killed her children. They disagree over whether she should be held criminally responsible for their deaths. There's been a big argument here on all of the psychotic type of drugs and stuff she was on, which could certainly drive one absolutely insane. But this whole thing has really become quite the story. It says her defense says severe mental illness, including postpartum psychosis, took over her ability to understand the wrongfulness of her actions, even though she waited for her husband to leave before she strangled their 3 kids. Prosecutors say that she knew exactly what she was doing. That's why she deliberately waited for Patrick to leave. The case has a lot of questions and emotions, but reasonable people will listen to the evidence and debate or disagree about those questions and answers. But somewhere outside of that reasonable debate and the Commonwealth courtroom, an entirely different Lindsay Clancy case has developed. On social media, mostly among left-wing women and mothers, Clancy has become something more than a criminal defendant whose mental state of mind is being judged by a jury. She's becoming a Joan of Arc style symbol. Women claim to be donating their last pennies to help Lindsay fight. Yeah, fighting the man. Women are also filming themselves sobbing while listening to her testimony. Mothers are holding their babies, looking dark and depressed while posting same, Lindsay. Same, Lindsay. This is not okay. It's insanely creepy and probably should involve CPS. Yes, well, note that they're leftist women, so it's okay when they do it. Imagine if they were Republicans trying it, or conservatives, or Christians trying it. It's become fashionable to grab your poor kid, turn on the camera, and start sobbing for Lindsay. Other women are hoping on social media to publicly describe their own frightening thoughts about hurting their children. So this is where we're going here in this society. Again, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. I think this kind of stuff with mothers turning against their own children helps to prove that we are indeed living in the end times. Women are also normalizing hopping on TikTok to tell their kids that they don't want them anymore. Yeah, and there was another woman who was just arrested for starting a fire in her own kitchen and burning her 2 daughters with candle wax. So, and that may be on here, I don't know. So it's just crazy person after crazy person here. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if you guys had followed all of that, but there's a lot of people here that are doing the same type of thing as far as trying to commiserate with what what's her name, Lindsay is dealing with, I guess. And keep in mind that Lindsay apparently felt bad enough about her killing of her own kids that she threw herself out of a window or something, right? That's why she's in a wheelchair. So I think she knew exactly what she was doing, personally. And now we have the first I've heard of, anyway, of a copycat killer where someone else has actually killed her kids. Mother slits the throat of her 3 children and told their father to say goodbye to your kids, according to cops. This is in North Dakota. A mother allegedly murdered 2 of her young children by slitting their throats and attempted to kill another after telling their father, say goodbye to your kids. So I think one of the kids lived. Anyway, this is where we are and how insane our civilization is becoming, at least in part because of all of this, all the crazy drugs people are on, legal or not. It says police said the couple was in process of separating when the incident occurred, and the father made a prior report about the wife threatening to hurt herself and her kids. She was placed in a mental health facility within the 12 to 18 months prior to the incident, but was cleared to be with the children following her discharge. So, and now she's killed at least 2 of the 3. She was charged with 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, 2 counts of terrorizing with a dangerous weapon, and 3 counts of aggravated assault, and misdemeanor domestic violence. So that's the first I've heard of a copycat with someone trying to do what this Lindsay Clancy did to her kids. So what a sad state of affairs this whole thing is, isn't it? Very sad. And that's where we are as a society, apparently. Man. Now, this is another mother, and I've heard her story, and she is being railroaded. So it's kind of the opposite. This mother didn't do anything, and yet they're trying to send her to prison tomorrow. Mom sentenced to prison for trying to rescue her son from transitioning into a girl. And the son was saved. The son is now 21, I believe. And the son is doing fine. There's another twist to the story here, though. The reason why she's still being basically railroaded into prison here. This is a California mom here. There are cases where the law tells you what happens but leaves out almost everything and explains why it happened, and that can be very troubling. And you go straight into the weaponization pool. Shanna Gaviola's case feels like one of those situations. The federal government's version of this case is brutal and really straightforward. They say Gaviola, the mom, violated a restraining order involving her teenage son, arranged to have him taken from California to a Christian boarding school in Missouri, and the people transporting him kept him handcuffed for more than 24 hours. She broke the law, a jury convicted her, and now she's been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. But that very dry and clinical version of the story leaves out the chunk that turned this case into a rallying cry for parental rights warriors. According to Gaviola and her supporters, this fight began after her teenage son wanted to transition into a girl, and the people around him, including his school, affirmed his decision without his mother's approval. Gaviola believed her confused child was headed toward a life-changing decision he would likely regret. And she refused to just stand by and watch it happen. Now, that style of parenting doesn't magically make a court order disappear, and it also doesn't mean every decision Gaviola made was legally defensible, but it does add a huge layer to the story that changes everything. A mother's motive and context should always matter when we talk about justice. She was trying to protect her child from what she sincerely believed could become irreversible harm. That's a far cry from somebody violating a restraining order because she wanted to terrorize or punish someone. But the federal government described Gaviola like a monster with no backstory. And what's worse is that the DOJ celebrated her conviction with talk of kidnapping and terror, while the FBI announced that her son could finally rest easier, knowing that justice had been served. That victory lap, among other things, bothers us. This is how the DOJ announced the conviction. Pay attention to the part of the story that gets the most ink: the handcuffs, the protection order, the federal violation, and the government's condemnation of Gaviola. Now notice how little explanation readers receive about the family battle that led to this mess. So here is the full story here and all of the details as presented by the DOJ, Eastern District of California. It says when the federal powers get involved, context seems to become optional whenever that context clashes with the preferred left-wing narrative, and in this case, the context and backstory are everything. The viral post that brought this case back into the spotlight lays out the argument and calls for somebody in the DOJ to step up and investigate further. So all that to say, they are trying to put this lady in prison, and she's down to, I think, essentially the only way she's going to get out or be spared from this is a pardon from Trump. So that's kind of where it is. So there's still time for the White House to act, and it should. Parental rights won't mean diddly squat if the government strips away every bit of context when it's time to show mercy. Whatever anyone thinks about how Gaviola handled the situation, sending a first-time offender to federal prison for 3 years over actions she believed were necessary to protect her own child, is far too much. This is exactly the kind of case executive clemency exists for. We're calling on President Trump to investigate Shanna Gaviola's case and determine whether she is deserving of executive clemency before she reports to prison. So anyway, another crazy story here, but her kid is actually fine and did not transition, from what I understand. But this has to do with quite a long and involved story and being railroaded, from what I can tell. And then along those lines, here's another similar story. Christian mom who spoke out against transgender policies blocked from her son's graduation, according to a lawsuit. This is on the Daily Signal. A Christian mom is suing Portland Public Schools. Well, that is one of the first problems here. Portland Public Schools, after officials barred her from her children's elementary school for a year in alleged retaliation for criticizing its transgender policies. What the district said was, be quiet or we will take your children away from you, essentially. At 8 hours a day, 9 months out of the year, you're going to essentially take my children from me, Allison Roberts, the mother, told the Daily Signal. Roberts has an elder child who graduated from Meriwether Lewis Elementary School more than a decade ago, and 2 younger children who both attended the school in the 25-26 school year, yet she missed her son's graduation from the school this year because police issued a trespass order against her based on what she alleges was a false principal report aimed at silencing her speech against transgender policies. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Roberts is suing Portland Public Schools, the district's senior director of the schools, and the principal of the school. She claims the defendants violated her First Amendment right to free speech by retaliating against her speech and discriminating against her based on her viewpoint, and violated her First Amendment right to free exercise of religion by imposing transgender ideology. the threat of future action. Roberts penned another open letter to the community in response. Wilson Cooper sent an email noting that the letter specifically names Lewis staff and Lewis community members. This is continued harassment, which was the basis for your trespass. So they're saying that her letters were harassing First Amendment violations. So you can see it kind of goes a little deeper here. First, for time immemorial, going back to the Revolutionary War era, public participation by handing out pamphlets or letters on the sidewalk is something that is afforded the highest constitutional scrutiny and protection. He emphasized that the school district characterized Roberts' speech as hate speech, even though the Constitution recognizes no such category. They made very clear that her statement and other statements that their actions were motivated by what she was saying. He also noted that Roberts is challenging the school district's transgender policies, citing Supreme Court precedent, which upheld parents' religious freedom to raise their kids according to their faith. Portland is not exempt from the Constitution, they say. I don't know. Are they? Maybe they are. Anyway, those stories kind of all go together. There's more insanity with, I guess, motherhood, but parenting in general. And it seems like the news on all of that is getting crazier and crazier. I don't know why all of a sudden, but there's been a lot of stories about that kind of stuff just real recently. Yeah, Emily says, I feel like I already need a doom break. Yeah, we'll get one. We'll get one here going here pretty quickly. Before we do, though, here is an update on the Irina Zarutska situation. Her family files a wrongful death lawsuit alleging no security guard was on the train. Ukrainian woman's family alleges the city's transit security contractor was severely understaffed at the time of her stabbing. Family of Irina Zarutska is suing the city of Charlotte and its private transit security contractor 1 year after her murder shocked the nation. The suit alleges systemic failures left the city's light rail system dangerously vulnerable. The case arises from the preventable death of Irina. The wrongful death complaint filed against the city of Charlotte and Professional Police Services Incorporated, doing business as professional security services. The allegations have not been adjudicated. What it shows is the systemic failures that have been with the CATS system for years and that the city has been aware of. So it's interesting, huh? Lawsuit alleges no security guard was aboard when Zarutska was fatally stabbed and accuses the PSS of failing to adequately staff and deploy armed and unarmed personnel. Yeah, I don't know if that would have stopped it or not. There's really no way to know, but clearly that did not happen. So, very interesting twist and turn in that story, huh? Anyway, I just wanted to give you that update on the Zarutska story. And a couple of Gateway Pundit articles. This one I thought was really bizarre. I'd heard about this before. We talked about it some time ago. It's official. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Stop Nick Shirley Act. The Stop Nick Shirley Act into law. Journalists in California, journalists can now be fined and jailed for uncovering Democrat fraud. The formerly great state of California took a giant leap toward becoming a complete leftist dictatorship with a new law that completely destroys the First Amendment. And keep in mind, California gets these things first, so this will spread through other, if California did it, then it will spread through other blue states and cities. As the New York Post reported, Governor Gavin Newsom officially signed the Stop Nick Shirley Act into law on Saturday. This comes just days after a leftist operative interrupted an interview the independent journalist was conducting at the state capitol and launched a disgusting and bizarre personal attack against him. The legislation, which officially takes effect on October 1st, 2027, passed the Senate on Tuesday and cleared the state assembly on Wednesday. The Stop Nick Shirley Act was introduced. I think it's interesting that they use his actual name in it. was introduced by Assemblywoman Mia Bonta, who is married to California's far-left Attorney General Rob Bonta. AB 2624 claims to expand California's Safe-at-Home Confidentiality Program to safeguard immigration support service providers from harassment. See, it's all about safety, unless you're someone that's reporting on all of their crimes. Then you get jailed or fined. It says, but in reality, this is a disgusting Democrat power grab designed to silence brave conservative citizen journalists like Nick Shirley, who exposed the rampant fraud bleeding American taxpayers dry in government-funded immigration service centers. For example, Shirley has exposed over $110 million in alleged Somali-run daycare fraud in Minnesota, empty learning centers, what was called learning centers, because they actually spelled it wrong, learning centers billing taxpayers while no children were present at all. Then he followed up with a shocking expose on California daycare and hospice fraud. This included ghost operations in Los Angeles tied to a massive looting of Medi-Cal and Medicare. But now Shirley's videos can be forced offline. Worse, journalists and citizens like him can be dragged into court, financially ruined, and even jailed. Yeah, I'm wondering if they're going to try and go backwards. You know what I mean? Like if you've already reported some of these things and done so-called sting operations or whatever, if they can go back in time and grab you and fine you and imprison you for things that have happened before all this Stop Nick Shirley Act was signed into law. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if they tried that as far as California goes. It's kind of how they operate. I started to say, really before, as far as I can remember, it was really the Clinton administration when they started going after the person who was reporting the crime. So the messenger was the first person who was always attacked. That was really the way the Clinton administration did business. That's what they always, that was their modus operandi. Go after the person who's the accuser, right? And you go after them personally. And that's kind of what the Stop Nick Shirley Act's all about, in a way. You're stopping the person from reporting the fraud, in his case, and putting them in jail or fining them. Well, speaking of the Clintons, watch out, Bill. This one seems pretty harsh, actually. Hillary Clinton reportedly planning old Bill's funeral as 80-year-old ex-president's health concerns mount. But it's just because she loves him so much. Hillary Clinton has reportedly begun making plans for the eventual funeral of her husband, former President Bill Clinton, as concerns continue to mount over the 80-year-old Democrat's health. Radar Online reported that Hillary, who's 78, has started arranging an elaborate memorial service while Bill is allegedly reviewing his estate and making potential changes to a report valued at $120 million. This report relies on unnamed insiders. According to Radar, Hillary's tentative plans include a traditional funeral service at a Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., followed by Bill's burial at or near the William J. Clinton Presidential Library and Museum in Little Rock. Well, you got Hillary Clinton planning your funeral. Chances are you're not going to be alive too much longer, is my thought on all that. So, yeah, I mean, maybe his health is really that bad. I don't know. They've been really secretive about his whole health situation over the years. Clinton turned 80 on August 19th, so just a few days ago. Although he has continued attending public events, including the Obama Presidential Center dedication in June, even People magazine acknowledged that the former president has appeared more visibly frail, quote unquote, in recent years, which he has. I've noticed that as well. Gateway Pundit previously reported Clinton appeared unsteady during a June 2025 book signing event, at one point grabbing a pole to stabilize himself as he approached the building. 2 months later, the Gateway Pundit reported that Clinton's entourage was seen carrying a Propac MD medical bag containing a portable patient monitor and defibrillator while Bill and Hillary departed the Hamptons. So who knows? But whatever the case is, I'm sure Hillary will be secretly planning a big party once Bill's gone. That's my guess. But yeah, if she's already planning the funeral, it's probably not all that far off, is my guess. Bill always seemed like a likable guy, even though he was, even though he was known as the Bubba, and even though he was smart, I think, he's one of the Epstein big names there, and probably a pedophile and all these other things. It was, to me, Hillary that was truly the evil person in the couple there. But yeah, they're both bad. Super evil. Starbucks headquarters in Seattle lays off hundreds as they prepare to send jobs to Nashville. Yeah, I heard about this, that they were coming to Nashville some months ago. Coffee giant Starbucks is laying off hundreds of people at their headquarters in Seattle as they prepare to ship many more jobs to Nashville, Tennessee. This is bad news for people in Seattle, but they should have thought of this before electing their new socialist mayor, Katie Wilson. I don't think it was just that, though. Companies that are demonized by their city tend to move to places where they will be appreciated and encouraged to be successful, which they would definitely get that from Nashville, I think. And not that I want Starbucks here, but I do understand from a business sense why they would want to do that. Starbucks announces details on layoffs of 200 plus Seattle headquarters employees. Joseph Phillips, professor of economics at Seattle University, says the first group include around 120 information technology workers who chose not to relocate to Nashville, the new corporate office in Nashville. He says the second group is made up of employees who worked on Starbucks store design. While Starbucks had previously announced broader plans for corporate layoffs earlier this year, details regarding the timing of specific roles affected are now being announced. We knew that Starbucks was going to move their IT to Nashville, and those employees would be offered the opportunity to go, so we are finding out that 120 employees don't want to go to Nashville. I say, yay. We don't want them anyway. Because I guarantee you all 120 of those employees who aren't coming to Nashville are all left-wing lunatics. So I say, stay in Seattle. That's my 2 cents. But I don't buy Starbucks coffee, never have. I don't even drink coffee. So, whatever. But I do think it's sort of interesting that they're officially announcing that they're moving headquarters to here. I think part of that, probably a lot of that financial decision has to do with the fact that there are a lot of tax breaks for businesses here, although you do pay a business tax in Nashville, although it wouldn't be nearly as much as it would be in Seattle. There's a tax on businesses, but there's no personal income tax. So not in the state of Tennessee. So that is a pretty big incentive for companies with getting tax breaks and then having the employees of those companies not have to pay personal income tax in the state of Tennessee. That's a plus. And you can certainly say that Washington and Seattle in particular could not say that exactly. So we'll see what happens. So it looks to me like Israel is starting yet again the next chapter, perhaps, of what they'd already been talking about, and that is war with Turkey. It says Turkey and Israel on brink of military clash after Netanyahu ordered strikes on Syrian airbase. At a moment of the ongoing Iran conflict, Israel and Turkey are escalating their competing claims and rhetoric over Syria to the point that full-blown war is being threatened. So being a person who is really interested in prophecy and scripture, the whole Damascus prophecy kind of comes back into visualization here a little bit with this, because we're talking Syria again here, and how apparently Syria and Turkey are heavily connected here. NBC writes of the irony of two American regional allies on the brink, a pair of key American allies, an attack on a strategic military base, and the intense election campaign. The United States has been scrambling to de-escalate this week after Israel launched strikes that appeared aimed not just at the country's regional rivals, but at its voters. The day prior, Turkey issued another arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu, citing the prior Israeli military crackdown on the Gaza aid flotilla last May. Wow. But the big issue, which could draw the two powers into a military confrontation, is the Israeli airstrikes on an airbase in northwest Syria. Early Tuesday, Israel has specifically framed the 8 strikes in the Abu al-Duhar airbase in northwest Idlib province as necessary to curtail Turkey's expanding military presence in Syria. Says Netanyahu's office claimed Israel and Syria had agreed to a status quo in security matters, which Damascus was on the verge of breaching by permitting Turkish troops to deploy at the airbase near Aleppo. Wow. So you can see how things could go bad pretty quickly in Damascus between Turkey and Syria and now Israel being involved. Turkey is a powerful NATO ally while Israel is Washington's closest partner in the Middle East. U.S. diplomats are scrambling to contain the rhetoric and creeping escalation. Turkey sees the situation as one where Israel wants to eventually push its occupation of southern Syria all the way to Damascus, while Israel has likewise warned that Turkey must not establish a permanent military presence in Syria. Both are going after the post-Assad spoils and seek to be the dominant voice over Syria matters. Well, yeah, who knows where that's headed, but Israel had already been announcing that they wanted to essentially go to war with Turkey next, after Gaza, after Iran, after all that stuff. I tend to think that they probably mean what they say. Netanyahu, this is on RT, Netanyahu brands Erdogan anti-Semitic dictator. So now we're calling names after Turkey's Interpol plea. Ankara wants the Israeli prime minister internationally sought on genocide and crimes against humanity charges, which we just mentioned in the Zero Hedge article that I just read some of. Bibi Netanyahu's office has lashed out at Turkish President Erdogan after Ankara announced that it's seeking an Interpol red notice for the controversial leader on genocide charges. The war of words comes amid broader tensions between the two U.S. allies after Turkey was angered by recent IDF airstrikes on an airbase in Syria. So this is really kind of more of the same, slightly different angle, I guess, on what's going on between Israel and Turkey. But I wanted to bring that up, just showing you guys that, when they said several months ago that Turkey's next, they weren't lying. They really are going to try and go to war with Turkey. And they're going to try and drag the U.S. into war with Turkey as well. That's what Israel does. So this is a kind of a crazy story, unrelated to Turkey and Israel. Over 100 killed in gold mine collapse in an African state. Rescuers have already recovered dozens of bodies from a site in Central African Republic, while no final toll has been announced yet. This was published a couple days ago now, August the 20th. More than 100 people were killed in Central African Republic, C-A-R, Central African Republic, after a gold mine collapsed near the border with Cameroon. Disaster occurred on Tuesday at a mining site in the country's western prefecture. Several underground galleries reported caved in while miners were working below ground. Wow. So here's the video, and most of, obviously we're looking at it from the outside. Most of what you see here happens down here at the bottom. So watch this. Watch the hill right here. Slide. So you can see the people at the bottom here just get completely covered. I don't know if that's some of the casualties or not, or if what they're talking about are people that were deep down in the cave. I have no idea. But that is not good. The disaster initially caused confusion over whether the mine was in the Kar or Cameroon region. Collapse occurred on Kar's side. The settlement straddles a border area. Cameroon authorities have confirmed that at least 4 of their nationals were among the dead. Deadly mining accidents are common across Africa, particularly at sites where miners often work in hand-dug tunnels with severely limited protections. Yeah, exactly. In January, more than 200 people were killed after a landslide struck the Rubaya Coltan mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The disaster, which followed heavy rains, buried miners working at the sprawling site, which is one of the world's major sources of coltan. So anyway, not something you generally hear about on the mainstream media necessarily. I just thought it was kind of interesting that that even happened. But wow, those poor people. They are working very hard, I guess, for mining gold. So for the people that own all the gold mines, whoever that is. Mount Etna eruption sparks worst aviation crisis for Sicily in 20 years. Hundreds of flights have been canceled due to volcanic ash, stranding thousands of passengers at Catania Airport during peak holiday season. So did you guys know Mount Etna was erupting again? Lots of craziness with earthquakes and volcanoes lately, it sure seems like. Drone footage released by Rupley Video Agency on Tuesday showed Etna lighting up the night sky as jets of glowing lava erupted from its summit and flowed down its slopes. So you can see the some of the different videos embedded here. Ongoing eruption stands out for its duration. Been going on a long time. Wow. So anyway, you get the idea. Sicily's worst aviation disruption in more than 2 decades. Huh. Yeah, Sicily's busiest airport and 6th busiest airport in Italy has called the disruption the most difficult emergency of the last 20 years. Between August 6th and 12th, 36% of some of the 1,974 scheduled arrivals were canceled, while around 630 incoming flights were diverted. By August 13th, nearly 800 flights had been canceled. So anyway, if you're planning to go to Italy, just watch out. Not that you are, but I just think that's kind of interesting. The Earth is certainly heating up. All right, and then this is a follow-up to a story from, I don't know, a few weeks back. NASA releases the first images of the SpaceX lunar crash crater. So I remember I said that it's taken a year or whatever, but the Elon Musk rocket is eventually crashing into the moon. We talked about that briefly several weeks ago. The discarded Falcon 9 rocket stage slammed into the moon earlier this month after drifting through space for more than a year. It took a year to get there. And we're supposed to believe that they just flew there in, just a few days? Through the radiation belts. NASA has released images showing a crater blasted into the moon by a discarded SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket stage that struck the lunar surface at around 5,400 miles per hour earlier this month. U.S. Space Agency published an animated before and after comparison on Tuesday using images captured by its Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that show the previously undisturbed surface and a dark new impact scar. The crater, according to NASA, again, never a straight answer, the crater measures roughly 18 meters or 60 feet across and less than 3 meters or 10 feet deep. So there's not much to this. I mean, I must say, this is just they made this into a GIF or a GIF file, so it's just before and after. If you blink, you'll miss it. That's all there is to it. So there's before and after. There's before, there's after. So you can see it just kind of hits a spot there and makes a big circle, big impact crater. 4-ton upper stage struck the moon on August 5th. After drifting through space for more than a year, the Falcon 9 launched in January 2025, carrying the U.S. Blue Ghost and Japanese Resilience lunar landers. Its reusable first stage booster returned to Earth while the second stage remained in space. Yes, and impacted the moon the other day. Weird, huh? SpaceX said the stage had initially been placed on a trajectory considered safe under existing rules. A combination of solar activity and gravitational forces later sent it toward the lunar surface. So it's official. Elon Musk is now on the moon. He can now officially say that he has landed his rocket on the moon. Well, he's crashed his rocket into the moon. Anyway, a couple more RT articles I just thought was somewhat interesting and unrelated to the moon. The old P. Diddy story, the entertainment version of Jeffrey Epstein, I guess. The P. Diddy story P. Diddy could face criminal charges over Tupac killing. According to the London Telegraph, prosecutors could reportedly take action against the music mogul if the man on trial for allegedly orchestrating the 1996 killing is convicted. So this is Sean Diddy Combs, obviously. Could face criminal charges linking to the killing of rapper Tupac Shakur in Las Vegas 30 years ago. The Telegraph has reported, citing sources. According to the outlet, prosecutors could take action if the man currently on trial over the murder is convicted. Combs, again, this guy, who rose to become one of the most powerful figures in U.S. hip-hop as a rapper and a producer, is currently serving a 50-month federal prison sentence after being convicted in 2025 on 2 counts of transporting people for prostitution. Yeah, they're not really calling it trafficking, but they gave him the lightest sentence possible, basically. So 50 months. On September 7th, 1996, Shakur was shot 4 times while he was stopped at a red light in a car with record executive Suge Knight. The 25-year-old died 6 days later while Suge Knight survived. His death soon became one of the most infamous unsolved murders in U.S. pop culture. So this is Tupac here. And this is music executive Marion Suge Knight, pictured outside Club 662 in Las Vegas, circa 1996, so about when it happened, roughly. The cold case was revived after Dwayne Davis, this guy, a former senior figure in the Southside Compton Crips street gang, began publicly discussing his involvement in 2018 and 19, eventually leading to his arrest in 2023. Members of the gang are believed to have provided protection to Combs in Los Angeles. Davis, this guy, now on trial for allegedly orchestrating the shooting, and previously claimed that Combs offered $1 million for Shakur and Knight to be killed amid an increasingly violent rivalry between Combs' Bad Boy Records and Knight's Death Row Records, which represented Tupac. Combs had denied any involvement, calling the allegations, quote, pure fiction and completely ridiculous, end quote. Davis now insists his previous accounts of the killing were fabricated for money and notoriety. So he's backtracking on what he said now, I guess. So he must have gotten the call. He probably got a threat, obviously. The Telegraph did not specify what charges Combs could face, but said that Davis conviction could lend credibility to the latter's claim regarding the $1 million offer. The door remains open on what charges could be made against Diddy, but if the jury convicts Davis, then it gives a green light to take action against Diddy. I guess it depends on how much Diddy is groveling to the powers that be, because it seems like if he's done sufficient groveling, he will get off and not face any Tupac charges. But who knows where this is going. But it is interesting that somebody is now saying or taking credit for it, claiming credit to some degree in Tupac's killing. That goes back a long time. Anyway, thought that was kind of interesting. And then this is further information on that. Tape of Tupac murder suspect played in court. Jurors heard Dwayne Davis, this guy, his 2008 admission that he was with the men who shot and killed the rapper, meaning Tupac. Jurors in Las Vegas court have heard audio recording of Dwayne Davis, who's on trial for the murder of Tupac, telling detectives that his late nephew, Orlando Anderson, actually pulled the trigger. So, wow. But whether or not Diddy was involved, who knows? But they all think that they're, gangsters from The Godfather or something. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they were all guilty. Pretty crazy. All right, let's see here. Oh, yeah, I came across this and thought it was interesting and kind of cool. Charlie Kirk Memorial Reef to be deployed off the coast of Destin, Orange Beach. I've been to Orange Beach, I must say. A massive 18-ton concrete pyramid honoring political activist Charlie Kirk leaves from Orange Beach this week, headed to Destin. He was a great family man, great leader, very intelligent, great debater, and just an admirable young man. Such a shame to see his life snuffed out that soon. That's the quote. The Memorial Fishing Reef is the brainchild of retired fishing captain Mike Parker. So here it is right here. Thought it would be good to do one in this honor, he said. I have a whole lot of people in our area that followed him and loved Charlie Kirk, so I put it out there and they said, yeah, let's do it. The artificial reef will be deployed in about 80 feet of water, a couple miles off of Destin's Henderson Beach. While it may be an artificial reef, it will be a permanent memorial. So there's what it looks like. You'll see quotes from him. You'll see the microphone on there. Prove me wrong was his statement when he would get on campus or wherever he was going. Construction of the reef actually began last year on what would have been Kirk's 31st birthday. We poured it in a day, and after it's poured, we place all the signage and the rocks in there. It's really a unique process, watching it come together. So this is what the construction of it looked like, I guess. At more than 20 feet, it's called a super reef because of its size. It symbolizes a man many thought was bigger than life and cements Kirk's legacy of God, family, and country. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Thought that was an interesting story. Not something you see every day. Somebody getting a reef dedicated to them. All right, let's see here. Yeah, back to the wacky weather again. Got lots of wacky weather these days, it seems like. Rare tornadoes hit New York City amid East Coast storms. 2 waterspouts came on shore and became rare tornadoes in the New York City area on Thursday, while other destructive storms hammered the Northeast. That is really strange. I've never heard of a waterspout or a tornado hitting New York, but apparently it just did. The first waterspout, a tornado that forms over water, came off the Atlantic and hit western Long Island. Authorities declared a state of emergency there in Nassau County. Though at the time of the announcement, no casualties or serious injuries were reported, the first waterspout tore through the Sun and Surf Beach Club on Atlantic Beach, damaging cabanas and buildings, according to the club. The second, shorter-lived waterspout came ashore in southern Queens and caused little damage. National Weather Service reported both waterspouts came ashore between 6:30 and 7 p.m. local time Thursday evening. Where were some of the other storms? Damage spanned the mid-Atlantic region as more tornadoes raced through Delaware and Pennsylvania. One large tornado tore through Dover, Delaware, Thursday evening, leaving a trail of damage, according to local police. Tornadoes touched down in central Pennsylvania over the past week, breaking the yearly record for tornadoes in the Pittsburgh region. Weird. Local authorities also warned of the severe weather and set curfews in southern Pennsylvania's Columbia Borough. Lightning strikes caused a fire at a multi-unit home in northeastern New Jersey and killed a man and injured a woman in Virginia's Chesapeake Bay. Wow. Ohio experienced serious flooding. National Weather Service warned of the possibility of more heavy rain across the eastern seaboard. So we talked about some of that last week, why that was happening, why the moisture was being pushed up there, and that's because of the heat dome that's sitting on top of where I am. So that the heat dome is over the southeast, but that pushes the moisture up and around, and then therefore places like Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and so on get the rain. And strange weather, apparently, with the tornadoes and water spouts. Very strange. All right, and then that was on WNG.org. And then so is this one. This is another one of those stories I think I've mentioned, but it's been a long time. Finnish, as in from Finland, politician blocked from entering the UK over biblical beliefs. Breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. Finnish politician Pavi Räsänen was blocked from entering the United Kingdom and speaking at a religious liberty conference. So she wasn't even allowed to come in and talk at a religious conference in Northern Ireland on Wednesday and Friday. Authorities refused to grant her a travel pass after the Finnish Supreme Court in March found her guilty of, say it with me, hate speech. The court ruled that a 20-year-old pamphlet that she co-authored 20 years ago, covering biblical beliefs on marriage and sexuality, was insulting to homosexuals as a group. Räsänen appealed her conviction to the European Court of Human Rights in July. On Saturday, the president of Alliance Defending Freedom, which represents the politician, announced that Räsänen had been granted a UK visa, but it came too late for her to attend the conference. So isn't that nice? She noted that the visa came only after Räsänen publicly called on British Homeland Secretary Mahmood to grant her the visa. Access to free speech should not require a public pressure campaign or depend on the whims of an administrative state, they said. You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? So they let her in. It was just too late. The conference was over. But yeah, that's right. It's always back to the old hate speech, as they like to say. Anything that disagrees with rampant and never-ending sinning, or whatever you want to call it, would be considered hate speech. You are guilty of hating someone when you're just simply citing the Bible. All right, this is another follow-up article. Not a whole lot of information here as far as new info, but this story is, I think, pretty compelling, given the fact that I tend to believe not the official story, but indeed what the mother states happened here. Idaho mom accused of killing her twin toddlers pleads not guilty. Idaho mother charged with murdering her twin toddlers pleaded not guilty on Tuesday. She says the children died from a vaccine reaction, not suffocation. As prosecutors allege, her trial set for January 2027 amid a national debate over the childhood vaccine schedule. So there's the little ones. So the story here is that she pleaded not guilty. Really, that's the main thing. Idaho mother charged with killing her twins pled not guilty on Tuesday during a short hearing. I'm going to see if there's anything else that we can mention here that we hadn't already. Andrea Renee Shaw, 23, pleaded not guilty to 2 felony counts of first-degree murder. She was indicted by a grand jury and arrested on June 30th on allegations that she deliberately suffocated her twins who died May 1st, 2025. Prosecutors allege the children were killed while sharing a bed in their home. She's consistently denied the allegation. She said her twins' deaths were caused by the vaccines they received at a routine doctor appointment just over a week before they died. The toddlers both had documented adverse reactions to the shots. Yeah, and the nurse and doctor went ahead with it anyway. That's kind of the bottom line here. Her bail was initially set at $2 million, but the judge revoked the bond and said that no money would be accepted, basically. So she's had to stay in jail this whole time. So there's more here on the details of the case. The children were vaccinated. 8 days later, both toddlers were found dead. 1 year later, prosecutors charged Shaw with first-degree murder. Prosecutors said investigators ruled out the other possible causes of death, including heat exposure, carbon monoxide poisoning, and vaccines. So they're saying they ruled out vaccines. That's just because they don't want to hear it. But there were other professionals, including the ER doctor, that said, yeah, it was the vaccines that did it. As far as an update here, she remains in isolation in the Payette County Jail. She was arrested 5 days after giving birth to a premature baby girl by C-section, and she remains separated from her child. 5 days. So she's been in jail all this time. So anyway, again, as more information comes out on this, we'll update you guys. But yeah, childrenshealthdefense.org is where that one is. Wanted to make sure that we got to this tonight because we've had to skip it for the last 2 weeks just because, or actually more than that, last two shows, which has been about 3 weeks probably, just for lack of time more than anything. So let's start with this. This is Revelation1823.net. Again, my good friend Mr. Brian's website. Where we left off from 2-3 weeks ago was the vaccination history. We had read through Rod of Asclepius. We had done that much and read the full chapter here. So let's go to the next section. Again, if you want to follow along at home, Revelation1823.net is the website. All these documents are available as PDFs, so it is free to download if you guys want to grab any of these things if they interest you. Historical opposition to vaccines, the pastor's perspective, a historical perspective through the eyes of the 18th and 19th century pastors dealing with the very first vaccine, smallpox. A picture says 1,000 words. Below is an etching by Charles Williams, 1802, depicting a monster being fed baskets of infants, then excreting them to a horned medical mercenary, who heartlessly threw them into a cart to be discarded, symbolizing the vaccination industry and its effects. So yeah, you can see the babies being fed in here, and it's being coming out the back end here, and being thrown into this cart by a person with devil horns, which makes total sense. Look closely and you will see a $10,000 check protruding from the back pocket of the horned Dr. Jenner. Let's see here. Where is that? Right here. There's the check, I guess. He's doing the feeding in. And then it says, the inventor of the smallpox vaccine, meaning Jenner, who received a cash reward from the government in recognition of his so-called contribution to medicine. In the distance, anti-vaccine doctors bearing the weapons of truth approach to do battle with the creature and the doctors who feed it. You can see him back here, see? Source is looking at medical history, vaccination. Scottish Medical Journal, 35, number 2, 1990, 53 through 55. But doesn't the internet say it was a success, meaning the smallpox vaccine? And didn't the World Health Organization declare the smallpox vaccine introduced by Dr. Jenner in 1796 to be the first successful vaccine to be developed, quote unquote? Welcome to the Serpent's Lies. In this chapter, you'll see the predominant message of the pastors was a stem warning of repenting of this delusion of the devil concerning vaccines, as they were in direct violation of the Word of God. And what was written next to the monster cowpox pus sores used to fight smallpox, plagues, leprosy, pestilence, ulcers, and Pandora's box? Yes, they knew back then that the only outcome was more disease as a byproduct. So it's saying 5-minute read. That's talking about this full chapter, which we will go to. So this is just the intro part of this vaccination history page. So let's jump over here to the full chapter, History of Opposition Pastors. So let me let that load. All right, zoom in a little bit here so you guys can see it. Historical opposition to vaccines and introduction, years 1600 through 1900. A historical perspective through the eyes of the 17th, 18th, and 19th century doctors and pastors dealing with the very first vaccine, smallpox. Think of the rock from which you came and the quarry from which you were cut. Isaiah 51:1. For most, history is to be tolerated when necessary and ignored when possible, right? The past is the past, dead and gone. It's all about now. But whether we like it or not, we are a product of our times. Groupthink in church history is the very tool that will free you from the prison of indoctrination. Christian, your church family went through these very issues we are facing now. This is your heritage, your quarry. Learn from them. What does this picture have to do with vaccines? Right here. Everything, as we will see. Diseases as such as the bubonic plague, smallpox, typhoid, tuberculosis, etc., all come from filthy living conditions. Did you know the bubonic plague was eradicated by following the biblical laws of hygiene? Let's see if God's laws are in opposition to Big Pharma. Shall we? Big Pharma would have you believe a vaccine is necessary for each of the filth diseases listed above. But the Bible teaches a different message. It addresses public hygiene. It's Hygien. Water supply, sewage disposal, inspection, selection of food, and control of infectious diseases. So let's try to get rid of our own biases, preconceived notions, and look through their eyes to see if this Big Pharma Leviathan is really on our team. Please note, advanced issues will be dealt with as we go on. And he's also mentioning Leviticus 14:54. This is the law for any infectious skin disease, quote unquote. You got the octopus with the Big Pharma medicine hat, looks like. Historical opposition to vaccines. Let's hear it from the pastors first. It says year 1796. The World Health Organization claims it was a success. Smallpox vaccines, World Health Organization, there's a link here. January 3rd, 2014, the smallpox vaccine introduced by Edward Jenner in 1796 was the first successful vaccine to be developed. Then here's a copy of a bulletin of the Anti-Vaccination League of America. Wow, from 1916. Child victims of a deadly rite, R-I-T-E. Interesting, huh? The children who lost their lives seem to tell a different story. Let's look at the quotes from the prominent doctors and pastors of the 18th and 19th century and get their views. I am tired of the lies. How about you? Reverend John Williams, 1721. Reverend John Williams, who lived from 1664 to 1729, was a Puritan minister in New England. He was a leading voice in the colonies in opposing smallpox variolation following its introduction. Williams called variolation a delusion of the devil, and that there was never the like delusion in New England since the time of the witchcraft at Salem, when so many young persons lost their lives. Here it is from, this piece here is from Manchester, 1872. Reverend William Hume Rothery from 1872. The theory of this so-called vaccination is that we must do evil that good may come. Create a disease to prevent a disease. A minor which may be followed by lifelong sufferings or a speedy and untimely death. to prevent a major which might never occur and could not possibly occur if the laws of health were faithfully obeyed. This theory would justify every description of wickedness within certain bounds. It, in the practice alluded to, which is based upon it, must therefore be indefensible on any Christian or rational ground whatever. Again, that was Reverend William Hume Rothery from 1872. And then W.G. Ward from 1880, the vaccination superstition, trying God's patience and oppressive to one's neighbor. A one W.G. Ward writes this is the Vaccination Inquirer. This is the quote: Englishmen and English women, when they fully comprehend the foulness of vaccination and the untrustworthiness of medical men, will certainly put down the murderous and costly superstition with a heavy hand. Our medical vaccinators, in slaying thousands of infants every year, again, this is 1880, and polluting temporary and for life many thousands more, are trying the patience of God and exasperating fathers and mothers. The crime of compulsory vaccination is so infamous that even the obtuse consciences of miscalled liberals, different meaning back then, must soon be aroused to take quick action to compensate for their long indifference to the oppression of their neighbors and the unjust waste of public money. Wow. Reverend George White, W-I-G-H-T, from 1884. At the Dumfries Sheriff Court on January 30th, the Reverend George White established church, Wamphray, was charged with having refused to have his child vaccinated. Mr. White pleaded guilty and urged that he had given the question of vaccination very anxious and careful study for many years. And to his mind, the weight of testimony was overwhelming against it. He found that medical men of the highest position and repute in England, the continent, and America pronounced it as their decided opinion, resulting from experience and observation, that not only was there no power in vaccination to protect from smallpox, but that it was the means of imparting dreadful and loathsome diseases, often consigning helpless infants to an early grave. Man, these people were way ahead of their time, weren't they? That's good that they recognized what was happening. The Union of Christendom Against the Evils of Christendom in Vaccination Tracts. Quote, to give up our little children to blood pollution for any offered good is against even the grossest conception of the genius of the Christian religion. It is unguided and unprincipled heathenism, end quote. Yeah, well said. Compulsory vaccination as sin and persecution. Is compulsory vaccination in accordance with the laws of God? If it is every man's duty to obey the statute of men, not because it is the law, but because it is right. If it is not, it is every man's duty to resist it, not because it is the law, but because it is wrong. And if it is wrong, though the law, it is tyranny and persecution to enforce, which is what we're seeing today. Every father who resists the bad law is simply performing his duty before God and man, and every creature who tries to enforce it, be he relieving officer, guardian, or magistrate, sins against God's laws and outrages the liberty of man. Vaccination tracts the vaccination laws a scandal to public honesty and religion. So there was a lot of work done early on in all this stuff. But we never hear about that, do we? Reverend Isaac Lockhart Peebles from 1902, the plea of the advocates of these vaccination abominations when cornered is, it is right to kill a few in order to save many. What a plea. Kill a few to save many. In reality, it is killing many to save none. The commandment of the God of the universe is ignored, whose commandment is, quote, thou shalt not kill. Exodus 20:13 and Romans 13:9. O killers of the people, an awful day awaits you, and may you realize this awful truth before it is forever too late. Just simply open your eyes and behold your diseasing, tormenting, unmerciful, and deadly work, and repent most sincerely of it, and cease it at once and forever before our God shall call you before him to account for it. And here's a picture of Isaac Lockhart Peebles. He was the Methodist reverend who wrote a thorough critique of vaccination in the book of Unanswerable Objections to Vaccination, which was published in 1902. So last page in this, and then we'll move on. I could go on and on with the Christian perspective, but you get the flavor, right? A complete and utter disgust for the practice. Here's an old picture here. Do not vaccinate. You got the skeleton with the veil and then the snake of vaccination. The woman taking her child and running. So why is it when we look at Google, we are given the words first successful vaccine, quote unquote, but when we look to history, there seems to be a completely different story? Are we being lied to? These were quite common ads from the 19th and 18th and 19th century with the prevailing theme of running or fighting. So that was one ad with the snake. Here's the other one. The Anti-Vaccination Society of America. An association of half-mad, misguided people, as those are quoted, who write and toil and dream of a time to come when it shall be lawful to retain intact the pure body Mother Nature gave, sends greeting to a suspect. Liberty cannot be given, it must be taken. You're invited to join us. So this is a meeting in 1902. Wow. So why the big difference between then and now? Let's look at more history. I would like to graciously thank Steve Halbrook from www.vaccinesandchristianity.org for his fight in exposing the evils of this industry and permission to use many of the quotes used in both sections for argument in pastors' and doctors' perspective. Please visit his site to see how dark the depths of this sorcery Big Pharma reach is. So, wow. Anyway, that's the full document here on the history of vaccination, the full PDF. So we just read through it. However, if you do happen to want to download that, I'll link directly to that document, the PDF, in the Substack post. But it's also here available on Revelation1823.net. If you find this picture, just scroll down a little bit and you can download PDF right here. So you can grab it that way. And then next week, we will take a look at historical opposition to vaccines, the doctor's perspective. Doesn't compulsory vaccination stop the disease? Maybe not. Not so much. All right. Anyway, just wanted to give you guys a little update on the whole vaccination history stuff that we tended to skip over the last few weeks. Naturalnews.com. Former Meta engineer says Zuckerberg prioritized growth over child safety and testifies at trial, which is one of the first articles we mentioned tonight, actually one of the needtoknow.news articles. But this is further information on that whole story. A former Meta Platforms engineering director testified Wednesday that CEO Mark Zuckerberg fostered a culture that treated child safety as secondary to growth and engagement on Facebook and Instagram, according to court proceedings. Arturo Bejar, the state's first witness, said the company's top-down structure meant product design changes moved only when Zuckerberg ordered them. Quote, if Mark makes something a priority, mountains move in months, he said. The trial opened Tuesday in U.S. District Court before Judge Yvonne Rogers and is expected to last 6 weeks, according to court officials. Jurors are expected to issue an advisory verdict, and Judge Rogers will decide liability and any civil penalties or changes to Facebook and Instagram. California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey are parties to a wider lawsuit involving 29 states. Wow. 29 states. filed in 2023. The states accused Meta of designing Facebook and Instagram to hook young users and of misleading consumers about safety, and they accused Meta of violating federal law by collecting and using personal data of children under 13. Meta has, of course, denied the allegations, which, yes, of course they have. Let's see here. Testimony at trial, allegations in disputed 2021 statements, cross-examination and work history, and then broader evidence in legal context. After Behar finished testifying, jurors heard recorded testimony from Meta researcher Elena Davis, who read from a report stating that Meta could change Facebook to have less potential to be habit-forming and provide support for people to break Facebook's habits that they don't want, according to the trial record. Experts have described the trial as the biggest legal test yet of social media's effects on young users. Meta faces thousands of similar lawsuits over alleged harm to children. Earlier this year, a New Mexico jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million for misleading users over child safety. We mentioned that story at the beginning of the show tonight. But yeah, that was earlier this year. So we'll see. We'll see what's in store for old Zuck. But it says Meta has estimated potential penalties up to $1.4 trillion. Sounds like almost what they had decided against Alex Jones. Almost. $1.4 trillion. I think with Alex it was like $1.75 trillion or something. It was the GDP of India. I remember that. The GDP of India. That was his penalty. Which, by the way, some of that stuff has been overturned in the last week or so with AJ. I don't have any articles on that, although we might get to that. We'll see. We'll see. Day of reckoning arrives for U.S. Treasuries just as the U.S. national debt reaches $40 trillion. Decades of incredibly foolish decisions have brought us to this point. The stage has been set for a meltdown of epic proportions. Yeah, I wanted to see it for myself. Of course, I knew that was true, so had to pull up the old U.S. debt clock. So if you haven't looked at it, here it is, right there. U.S. national debt, $40 trillion, which is debt per citizen, $116,000 of debt per citizen in the United States. So it's $116,520 per citizen, but it's $360,000 per taxpayer. So it says a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah, U.S. debt clock. Out of control. We all knew that this was coming for ages. People like me have been ranting that we would be facing a financial nightmare if we didn't get the national debt under control. Of course, most of the population didn't want to listen. They just kept sending the big spenders back to Washington. Now we are $40 trillion in debt, and we are spending well over $1 trillion a year just in interest on that debt. Nobody can deny that we've reached a stage where our debt spiral is totally out of control. The federal budget deficit for the month of July was $432 billion. Yes, but there is a little thing called the war with Iran going on at the same time. Interest on the national debt for the month of July was $118 billion. Interest for 1 month. Now Treasury yields are spiking as investors become hesitant to buy more of our debt. Borrowing costs are rising to very alarming levels, and we are in far more trouble than most people realize. This is an article by who? Michael Snyder. So this is a Michael Snyder piece here from Economic Collapse blog. Lots of good info here, actually. But his articles are always really well done, very well written. So yeah, $40 trillion bucks. All right, let's take a look at our other Substack posts that we like to look at on the show. Wine Press. Thought this one was pretty interesting. Betrayal. Trump announces 300,000 tons of tariff-exempt imported beef amidst rising prices, but no help for American ranchers. I thought tariffs were supposed to make us rich. He did say that, didn't he? I like how he's getting ready to eat the steak that's called the "fell for it again" steak. Today, Trump announced on Truth Social that his administration will be importing roughly 300,000 metric tons of imported ground beef as national beef prices continue to rise and cattle supply remains at record lows. All by design, I would add. In his post, Trump said that he will be waiving tariffs on these imports and will do so for the next 90 days, just in time for the November midterm elections. And this was his post here. Yesterday, USDA Secretary Rollins was asked about what the administration is doing to try and lower beef costs, and she, like she had said last year, blamed the Biden administration for the high prices. Because that's what you do. You always blame the previous administration, whether they had anything to do with it or not, which they may have, but point is, this guy is president now, not Biden. Last October, Trump and the USDA imported tons of beef from Argentina in an attempt to keep prices down and support Argentina's worsening economic conditions, prompting pushback from American farmers and ranchers, some of whom previously supported him. When they pushed back, Trump did as well as chastise them for not lowering their prices. Right here. But they also have to get their prices down, he said in a tweet, in a post. Then in February this year, Trump signed an executive order quadrupling those Argentinian beef purchases under the guise of combating the rise of a parasitic screwworm outbreak. I remember that. So the battle of the beef continues. We've got some info here on this site as well about that. First, the president paid Argentina $20 billion to send beef here. Now he's importing another 300,000 metric tons of foreign beef to undercut American cattlemen. So here is a couple of tweets that make a lot of sense. Let's start with this one from the Patriotic Blonde. On March 19th, 2026, Chinese customs rejected a 22-ton beef shipment from an Arab beef plant in Argentina after finding it contained, and help me pronounce this, chloramphenicol, a dangerous chemical banned in livestock production since 1995. And you know it's bad when the Chinese are banning it. I mean, man. It says, but guess where Trump says America will now be getting our beef in order to bring down beef prices, driven through the roof due to his tariffs? You know, where did he say that was coming from? Yeah, Argentina, where China is banning beef from. They rejected a 22-ton beef shipment because of this chemical that had been banned since 1995. And then this from Harrison Smith, also of formerly InfoWars, Alex Jones Network. He allows 600,000 Chinese students to take American university slots so Jews can censor TikTok. He uses American diplomacy to help Morocco invade Spain to punish them for opposing Israel. Now he's sacrificing American beef producers to help Israel's South American colony. Yeah, Israel's South American colony. Literally, in Argentina. And it says literally sacrificing America itself to build the global Jewish empire. Yeah, because it is Argentina we're talking about, which is where many of the Israeli people will be exporting themselves to at some point. Who else did that? Who else did that after World War II? I think his name started with the H and had an ITLER in it. It is ironic that the Israelis are moving at least some of their headquarters to some extent to Argentina when the Nazis did the exact same thing after World War II. Fact. Now, why would they do that? Maybe they're the new Nazis. Oh, but you can't say that. You can't say that. All right, let's go back to Substack here. This is a different Substack post from the Wine Press. Dumbing down. Apple integrates with ChatGPT, allowing users to send and read text messages for you. And I keep thinking, why would you do this? You're just asking for trouble. It says it can also analyze your messages. It's really fun to get insights about who you talk to and what you talk to people about. Who has time for this? That's my question here. Why would you do this? Who has time for it? Apparently some people do. ChatGPT has now been integrated with Apple users and can analyze and send text messages on the user's behalf, raising privacy concerns with some. No kidding. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, as they say? On a post on X, OpenAI said, quote, search messages, catch up on conversations, draft and send replies, all with ChatGPT on your Mac, end quote. And they're giving an example here. ChatGPT is, everyday conversations just got easier with the new Apple Messages plugin. Search messages, catch up on conversations, draft and send replies, all with ChatGPT on your Mac. Now available in ChatGPT Work and Codex on desktop. Codex is like a plugin thing that works with chat. So yeah, chat responding to text. So now we're too busy to even respond to our own text, apparently. ChatGPT has to do it. Oh, of course. Ari Weinstein, a member of OpenAI and Apple, added, we've added a native integration with iMessage so ChatGPT can now send and read messages for you, exclamation point. It can also analyze your messages. It's really fun to get insights about who you talk to and what you talk to people about. So, says Ari Weinstein. I don't think that's a Presbyterian name. Pretty sure. Now, I think what would happen here is if you install this plugin, it's instantly going to send your texts and pictures and everything else your phone has on it to the IDF. So that's the added bonus. That's the added benefit. It'll just send it straight over to the IDF, and you won't have to bother, going through Facebook or somewhere else first to get your information to them. They'll just instantly have it. I'm just joking, but not really. This plugin will also not send a message on your behalf until you explicitly approve the message ChatGPT drafted for you. Well, that's good. At least you can tell it not to hit send before you look at it. I just can't imagine. I mean, there's going to be a lot of horror stories about this, I'm sure. And I say, if you ask for this issue, this problem in your life, you probably deserve it, honestly, because you can turn it off. You can not use it. You can choose to say no. And yet, people won't. They'll still do it anyway because they can. All right, we've got several things here about blackouts going on. So I wanted to mention this. First one is Leo Hohmann's Substack. Nationwide blackout on deck, ? Get ready for a false flag attack on the U.S. power grid, likely to be blamed on Iran. Mainstream media telegraphing government's potential next move, which would justify Trump's desire to use tactical nuclear weapons against an enemy he's been unable to eliminate with conventional arms. Yes, and also I would add, we are running out of conventional arms, even though Pete Hegseth, Mr. Third Temple, says otherwise. But everyone else is saying, yeah, we're running out of the missiles and so forth. So we're getting down to all that's left is tactical nuclear weapons or some version of that. It's important to read the government's favored propaganda organs on the right and on the left because they are very useful in helping to predict the future. Leo Hohmann says, in my previous post, I featured an article by Fox News about rapidly advancing humanoid robot soldiers. I think I have that one. We'll look at that as well. A clear signal that the power elites among Washington's Epstein class are wanting to prime the pump to get people on the right to use the idea of robots serving in military and law enforcement roles. Like with the flock surveillance cameras, don't worry about your civil liberties being trampled upon because These armed and dangerous AI robots are for our safety and security. They'll be protecting the border, Fox News tells us. What's not to love about that? Your typical Fox News viewer will lap it up, will feel assured that their president is using everything at his disposal to keep those nasty illegals from entering our country. They won't even think about all of the nefarious and brutal possibilities for AI robots once they've been unleashed. But I guarantee you the government is thinking about it and planning for it. What better way, for example, to disarm law-abiding citizens who believe in the Second Amendment than to send robot soldiers to their homes to confiscate weapons that can be made illegal with the stroke of a president's pen? With 6G technology, they will be able to see through the walls, through your clothing, and know who has weapons on their person or in their homes. They will no longer need to risk the lives of human SWAT teams breaking down people's doors. They will simply sick the robots on you under the color of law. They could simply declare you a danger to yourself or your community by virtue of having too many guns or the wrong type of guns while speaking out against the surveillance state. Yeah, I'm looking to see where this gets into. That's all true and good, but I'm looking to see about the blackouts here. This article titled, Warning, the mammoth nationwide blackout could last 18 months as power grids' appalling weak spots exposed, tells you everything you need to know about what's coming. So this is linked to, it's a Daily Mail article, actually. Remember, Klaus Schwab, former director of the WEF, said 6 years ago that a major cyber attack, here's the video, would hit the world, and the COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison. Those demons always tell us their plans ahead of time. Hollywood is another favorite tool for telegraphing their plans. How many movies were churned out about society-altering pandemics before they launched COVID? They've been telegraphing a debilitating cyber attack for almost as long, but that still hasn't happened. I would say it's overdue. It's time to prepare for it now. They're saying nationwide blackout that could last for 18 months. Could you imagine what a nightmare that would be? I mean, we're talking Mad Max at that point, I think. So that is one of Leo's Substacks. We'll come back to one other one here in just a sec. But while we're on the idea of blackouts and what's going on here, this reminded me of what I personally experienced earlier this year, around the 1st or 2nd or so, I think, of February. It was the first week of February. Nashville had an ice storm, and it literally pretty much brought the entire city to a standstill because power was out all over town. Now, not the entire town, but a lot of Nashville was out of power. Personally, we had power out for 8 days. Our power was out for 8 days, and all of our neighbors left and went to hotels and stuff. We have a generator, so we ran the generator for 8 days, and I can tell you it was not cheap. It was very expensive, but we were prepared, and most people weren't. So I'm finding, though, that it sort of compares to what we went through to what this town in Indiana is going through, or this area in Indiana is going through. Frustration builds in Indiana town struggling without power for 12 days. 12 days. Oh, it's 11:11 p.m. Gary, Indiana, which, by the way, is where Michael Jackson was. That's where he grew up. Like so many in Gary, Indiana, Shataya Harden has been waiting for the minute her power finally turns back on. It's been absolutely horrible, she told CBS News. At night, we're sweating, we're irritable, we have children to look out for, elderly people who need electricity for oxygen tanks. Beginning August 11th, several days of powerful storms walloped northwest Indiana, killing at least 7 people and displacing about 1,000. The storms brought record rainfall that flooded several communities. So we've talked about a lot of the flooding that's been going on in that area several times on this show. In Gary, Indiana, the storm knocked out electricity for more than half of the city's residents, where about 1 in 3 people lives in poverty. according to U.S. Census data. It is not okay for us to continually be in survival mode, she said. When we don't have service in this area at all whatsoever, at night, the streets, the roads, everything is pitch black, besides the lights from cars. Wow. So there's some workers cutting trees here. As of Sunday, so this morning, just over 28,000 customers of the Northern Indiana Public Service Company, the region's electrical utility provider, were still without power. At the height of the storm, 374,000 customers had no electricity. The governor, Mike Braun, requested an expedited major disaster declaration from FEMA for 54 counties. He estimates losses from the storm and aftermath could top $5 billion. If granted, the declaration will mean significantly more resources to accelerate Indiana's recovery from the recent severe weather. Many residents in Gary have been relying on a community center for hot meals, air conditioning, and a chance to charge their phones. Yeah, so if you didn't know, Gary, Indiana is basically right next to Chicago. It's basically a suburb almost of Chicago. It's way up there, northwest. The class action lawsuit was filed this week against NIPSCO, alleging the company failed to proactively trim back vegetation from power lines. Where have we heard that before? They do that kind of stuff on purpose. They let the limbs all, kind of grow over the power lines and stuff, and then when a windstorm comes along, it starts big fires and or takes out the power. So yeah, they proactively did not trim back vegetation from power lines. The lawsuit alleges that downed trees and vegetation were the primary cause of the power outages. NIPSCO, of course, disputes the claim, saying its vegetation management spend has more than doubled since 2016. So, kind of reminded me of what Nashville went through in the waning weeks of winter with, the ice storm that we had, again, around February the 1st. So, Gary, Indiana is experiencing something similar now. So maybe say a prayer for those people, because that is not good to be without power that long. And then this Substack post came up as well that I found. John Walter on Substack, The Grid Keepers, how 3 people in a room can turn off your world. The outages you've been experiencing, ? The rolling blackouts, the unprecedented demand, failures, the infrastructure collapses that always seem to happen at the most politically convenient moments. Those aren't accidents, they're tests, they're collaborations, they're calibrations. They're proof of concept demonstrations for buyers who want to know that the product works before they commit to purchasing it. I must have looked as confused as I felt because I leaned forward and spoke slower, like he was explaining something to a child. The product is control, you idiot. The product is the ability to turn civilization on and off like a light switch. And there are people, organizations, governments, corporations, call them what you want, who will pay any price for that capability, any price at all. That was how it started. That was my introduction to what I've come to call in the years since the grid keepers. The grid keepers. The people in the shadows who don't just manage electricity, but weaponize it. Who have transformed the most fundamental utility of modern civilization into an instrument of coercion so subtle that most people never realize they're being manipulated, even as they sit shivering in the dark or sweltering in heat that can kill. So there's more to this story on this guy's Substack. Again, John Walter, 25 on Substack. First thing I learned is the grid keepers are not a conspiracy in the traditional sense. They're not a secret society with robes and rituals in a headquarters in an ancient temple somewhere. They're a network, a loose, constantly shifting coalition of engineers, intelligence operatives, corporate executives, and government officials who share a common interest in maintaining the capability to disrupt electrical supply at will, and who have discovered that this capability is worth more than gold in a world where every aspect of human existence depends on reliable power. And we'll leave it at that. But there is a lot more here on this Substack post. I thought that was pretty appropriate given what we've been talking about here with the power outages and such. So let's go back to Leo Hohmann for just a sec. Next phase of surveillance grid. This is the one about the robot soldiers, and I mentioned this earlier. You got to see this video, and I can't play it for you because it's got music in it, and that is one of those really dangerous things to do on a live stream. If you don't have a license for said music, they can shut your live stream down. And I don't have one for this particular video's music bed. Next phase is surveillance grid. Tech startup backed by president's son, i.e. Eric Trump, pitches its humanoid robot soldiers to almost all national security agencies. At the border, on the battlefields, and soon to be deployed on the streets of America, the militarized robots are coming. Again, this is a Leo Hohmann Substack. This guy knows what he's talking about. America is quickly devolving into a militarized, technocratic surveillance state. And a story that recently appeared on the Fox News network is enough to make you shudder at the possibilities. It's a company called Foundation Robotics is now discussing potential national security deployments of its Phantom humanoid robots. That's what they call it. They've named it the Phantom. Reminds me of Scooby-Doo. Phantom. The Phantom. Phantom humanoid robots along the southern border. Foundation Robotics is a Silicon Valley-based startup. They always are. Focused on developing advanced humanoid robots for military and industrial applications, replacing humans in American factories and along the front lines in wars and tense border policing situations. The company reportedly received up to $100 million in backing from Saudi royals and also has one of President Trump's son, Eric Trump, as its chief strategy advisor. Its CEO, who has a Star Wars name, Sanket Pathak, was the CEO of the bankrupt fintech firm Synapse before it collapsed amid accusations of unethical investment practices. Yeah, when I say someone has, and I didn't come up with that. When I say someone has a Star Wars name, that means they sound like they're an illegal. That doesn't mean they're an illegal. That doesn't mean that they're dumb. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying generally it's going to be people from other countries coming in, taking American jobs, and doing what they will. So that's what this guy's name sounds like, as a Star Wars character. More on that in a bit. The journal Financial Debate wrote about him last year. The fallout from Synapse's failure, including millions of dollars in missing deposits and unresolved issues with partner banks, has cast a shadow over Pathak's reputation and potential success with Foundation Robotics Labs. But now, Pathak has resurfaced with a new company, and U.S. Department of Homeland Security may be getting ready to sign a big fat contract with his sketchy character. Isn't that lovely? Let me play this video, and I will just keep reading over it. I'm going to mute the... I'm going to mute it just because it is, again, music that has not been cleared for playing on this particular show. But you can see what's going on here. This is the Phantom. The Phantom MK1 robot soldiers are already being beta tested by Ukraine in its war with Russia. Take a look at the fearsome MK1 humanoid robot in 2-minute video below. It was reported on April 23rd that the U.S. Marines have already signed a $24 million contract with Foundation. Man. But you can see how they work. I would think that this thing would give Musk's, whatever he calls his robot, the Tesla robot, a run for its money. Pun intended. Because I think they can both run. Foundation Future Industries, a Silicon Valley startup developing humanoid robots, landed the $24 million contract to test its Phantom android with the Marine Corps, according to a Thursday, April 23rd, Fox Business report. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, that's all we need, huh? That is all we need. Robots running around the streets. You know, and they always will couch it in some sort of, oh, it's here for your safety. It's going to protect us. It's going to protect the border or whatever. And then it just spirals out of control from there. That's pretty much always the way. All right, we've got one more Substack post. No, two more Substack posts. Here's the next one. This is one that I cite often. Had some pretty good feedback from last week's video clips about Trump and the Noahides and the interview that I played that was a special edit that I did with the interview with Matt Murphy. So if you guys missed that, you should definitely go back and watch it. I think it helps explain a lot of what's going on with Trump and Israel and the powers that be over in Israel and how it's all intertwined and interconnected through prophecy. And that's what we're seeing unfold. And how, yes, a third temple will be rebuilt. And we will be going under the Noahide laws. It's all being planned out now. Again, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. The real Noahide plot to conquer Christianity in the West. This is on Insight to Insight, a Substack that I mention often. You've been lied to about what it is, what it demands, and what it will do with Christians. The real Noahide plot to conquer Christianity in the West. The 7 Noahide laws have been quietly creeping into American political life for decades, usually disguised beneath the most harmless description imaginable. 7 basic principles for a moral society. What almost nobody bothers to explain is what Noahidism actually means once you get past the 7-item brochure. What it plans to do with Christians and how deep the conspiracy really goes has been hidden from the American people in plain sight. And again, Matt Murphy covers all that in great detail, I think, in the clip that was played in the interview clip that was played in the show last week. So if you missed last week's show, please go back and watch that. And you can watch just that clip that's available on both YouTube channels. It's also on my X channel, and it's also on my Rumble channel. So make sure you guys see that. The whole discussion with the Noahide laws. Very important. But I'll read just a little bit of this, and then you guys can follow up if you want to. Texas has produced a share of strange religious movements, but even by Texas standards, this one takes the cake. Beginning in the late 20th century, a group of ostensibly Christian Gentiles began gathering around a former Baptist minister named Vendell Jones, studying Jewish rabbinic law, renouncing Christianity, and embracing the idea that Gentiles are ontologically inferior to Jews, and that God has assigned Gentiles a separate submissive religion under the 7 laws of Noah. Jones became one of the fathers of the modern Noahide movement, and Fort Worth became home to the first international conference of the descendants of Noah, which was held there in 1990. Its keynote speaker was none other than Rabbi Meir Kaneh, founder of the Jewish Defense League and the Israeli K-A-C-H or Catch, I don't know, party, a man whose politics were considered so extreme that Catch was eventually barred from Israeli elections. For added context, Kahane is the muse and hero of Israeli security minister and wanted international terrorist Ben-Gvir, who he referred to as, quote, my hero and holy man. Kahan was widely repudiated for anti-Gentile racism, was banned by Israel's Central Election Commission for racism, and Israel's High Court of Justice upheld the ban. He advocated for the full expulsion of every non-Jew from Israel and advocated for Israel to be fully run by the rabbinate, the rabbis, under Jewish Timu Sharia or Halakha, not just its civil legal system, the same way Iran is run by clerics under Sharia. In 1989, Kahane said, "I have not the slightest sympathy for Christianity or Jesus." He hated Jews for Jesus and created a group to attack them called Christians for Moses, and said, "If you lose a Jew in Auschwitz or through conversion, it's still a soul lost." Wow. In 1976, he stood outside of Jimmy Carter's Baptist Church in Georgia, disrupted their worship to announce the creation of born-again Christians for Israel, and demanded Christian American fellow citizens to support Israel as a religious duty, and God commanded it. He was a real peach, this says. Yeah, so anyway, we'll leave it at that, but he gets into a lot of the details of the Noahides, which I'm sure, some of you guys are already following that and may know more about this than I do, but this gets into Mike Huckabee as well, who I call the Israeli ambassador to Israel. Technically, I think he's the American ambassador to Israel, but you can argue that point for sure. He's more Israeli than American. There he is right there. Anyway, we'll leave it at that, but that is Insight to Insight. And this is the other Substack I came across. This one looked pretty interesting as well. Again, with the Noahides, Unshackled Truth Ministry on Substack. The Noahide Mandate. Donald Trump, the first Jewish president, and the coming global decree. Again, all stuff we touched on last week on the show. Trump, the first Jewish president. Mentioned it last week. Donald Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago, according to White House official. Well, that was from 2019. So 2 years ago would mean he converted in 2017. During his 2024 campaign, Trump delivered a striking promise directly to his Christian audience. On July 26, 2024, at Turning Point Action's Believers Summit, we know who headed that up, Mr. Kirk. In West Palm Beach, Florida, Trump urged Christians to turn out for him just this time, telling them in 4 years you don't have to vote again. I remember that. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote. He did say that. You guys remember that? Under the theory explored here, what happens in the November 3rd, 2026 midterms, coming up in just a couple months, does not determine Trump's longer-term plans. What matters is getting past the election itself. Evangelical Christian voters remain a crucial part of the Republican electoral coalition, and announcing support for a controversial global Noahide initiative beforehand could risk alienating voters needed to win the House and Senate. Once the votes are cast, that immediate political constraint disappears. Yeah, so this will be post-election. Win or lose, Trump cannot run for another presidential term under the Constitution, and under this theory, he would no longer need evangelical Christian support for his own reelection. The midterm results, therefore, do not trigger the proposed agenda. They simply remove the electoral reason to hold it back. The stage is set for the great pivot, and Trump has recently made a curious remark about what might come after his presidency. On May 20th, 2026, while speaking to reporters at Joint Base Andrews, Trump claimed, quote, "I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel and run for prime minister." I remember that. We reported on that when he said it. That was in May. The remark appeared jocular, and Trump provided no evidence for his extraordinary 99% figure. Still, within the scenario explored here, the comment is noteworthy, not as evidence of a Noahide plan, but because Trump himself publicly floated the idea of a political future in Israel after his time in the White House. Here's a clip if you want to watch him say it again, when he's claiming he has 99% support, and he probably still has pretty high support. I don't think that it would be 99, but it's up there, I'm sure. Whereas here he's in the basement 30s. The scenario, the November 6th climax and the Sanhedrin's Messiah. picture the global landscape just 72 hours after the polls close on November 3rd, 2026. By November 6th, the midterms are over and the votes have been cast. Yeah, but not if you're in California. I mean, we all know California will be in the middle of just starting, really, election season. So California won't be done counting votes for a month or two, probably. They might be done by the end of the year. We'll see. Whenever the final balance of power of Congress is, the immediate electoral needs to preserve evangelical Christian support has passed. Within the theory explored here, it is the timing, not necessarily the outcome of the election, that matters. At that very moment, thousands of miles away in Jerusalem, another significant event reaches its conclusion. The First International Congress of Noahides, scheduled for November 2nd through 6th, enters its final day. Notice it's happening right during our election. For those unfamiliar with the movement, and we've covered this already on several shows back, where we talked about this meeting, the First International Congress of Noahides, and we showed you the websites and stuff. So we've already talked about this, but it says, for those unfamiliar with the movement, Noahides are non-Jews who seek to live according to the 7 laws of Noah, universal moral and religious principles rooted in Jewish tradition. Yeah, it's imposed, actually, on non-Jews. The Jews themselves are exempt from having to obey the Noahide laws. It's only for non-Jews. So, again, covered that last week. Even the location carries extraordinary biblical significance. The Congress will be held in the Seven Arches Hotel on the Mount of Olives, overlooking Jerusalem's Old City and the Temple Mount, the site associated with Jewish tradition with a future third temple. And only about 0.3 miles, roughly a 6-minute walk from the hotel, stands the Chapel of the Ascension, traditionally identified with the place of Christ's ascension. For Christians, the connection is unmistakable. Acts 1, 9 through 12 records Jesus ascending into heaven and then identifies the disciples as returning from the Mount of Olives. At the ascension, the disciples were told, this same Jesus will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven. Acts 1:11. Thus, according to Christian tradition, the Congress will convene only minutes from the place commemorating where Christ ascended and from the mountain associated with his promised return. For readers approaching these events through a prophetic lens, the geography is therefore striking. An unprecedented international Noahide Congress devoted to establishing a formal global structure meeting on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the Temple Mount, and within walking distance of the traditional site of Christ's ascension and promised return. The Jerusalem pivot, a global covenant of nations. What if Donald Trump were to make a sudden historic trip to Israel to attend the closing of this gathering, meaning the Noahide meeting? Standing in Jerusalem alongside Israeli leaders, imagine Trump formally endorsing an international Noahide framework as the foundation for global peace and cooperation. Within this scenario explored here, such an announcement would not emerge in a vacuum. It would appear against a documented series of appeals and declarations from the nascent Sanhedrin concerning Trump and the 7 Noahide laws, the Messiah, and the rebuilding of the temple. When it says the Messiah, that means the coming Jewish Messiah, not Jesus. That's not who they're talking about here. One of the most significant came on February 12th, 2025, when the Sanhedrin addressed a formal letter directly to Trump. The letter portrayed Trump as having been chosen for a historic mission comparable to the Persian King Cyrus and invited him to meet Sanhedrin rabbis in Jerusalem to discuss the establishment of an international divine court for all nations, based upon the 7 Noahide commandments as a foundation for what the letter called global peace and divine justice. The letter is actually linked to here. There's an article linking to that. Because there has been a surge in traffic to the original site, it may not open or may it load slowly. I've also posted the letter here. So the letter is in 2 different places on this Substack. So, wow. There's a few other links as well. Against that background, Trump's hypothetical endorsement of an international no-hide framework would carry extraordinary symbolic weight. Jerusalem would become the stage for an attempt to present the 7 no-hide laws as a universal moral architecture for the nations, one capable, at least in the vision of its advocates, of bringing different peoples and faiths under common principles while preserving their distinct identities. That interfaith dimension is important. You know, I would note too here, right here, the interfaith dimension is important. That has been something that King Charles III has been talking about for a long time. If you go back and think about some of his more recent statements, and then also leading back to his, in May of, when was that, 23? When he was made king at that point. He made sure that interfaith was a real big part of that ceremony. So that's a huge thing. And if he's going to be the biblical Antichrist, it kind of goes, right with that, hand in hand with it. As examined later in this post, Brit Olam, No Hide World Center, has explicitly reached out to Muslims in an effort to establish theological common ground. It's a bridge between faiths. An open letter to Islam demonstrates that advocates of the No Hide movement are already considering how their message might engage Islam rather than remain confined to Judaism or existing no-hide communities. For Christians interpreting these developments through an eschatological lens, John 5:43 inevitably enters the discussion. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will accept. So anyway, there's a bit more here on this. A smoking gun, bridge between faiths, exposed. The silent coup, Kushner's Temple Mount blueprint. So Jared Kushner, I guess. Major controversy is already unfolding over the future of the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa compound. Jordan has publicly warned of an imminent threat to the historic status quo, while others citing regional sources, has alleged broader efforts by the U.S. and Israel to diminish Jordan's traditional custodial authority over Al-Aqsa. We talked about that just last week. Yeah, because they're saying, well, we might just have to hit it with a stray missile and blame it on Iran. So yeah, there's a bit more here. I was looking to see if it got into Kushner. Prophetic hierarchy, the beast and his network. Kushner's not the beast. He is the architect helping build the machinery around him. So this is pretty interesting. It's really the first time I've even looked at this particular Substack at all, and then also this post. Here's a section called The Guillotine of the Law. We know what that's about. Yeah, you can't worship idols, is what they say, according to the no-hide laws, and they consider Jesus an idol, not equal with God, So therefore, those who worship Jesus are worshiping an idol. Therefore, you get your head chopped off. See how that works? Anyway, there's a lot here. This is a really long article, but it seems pretty in-depth and really good information. Unshackled Truth Ministry on Substack. So pretty cool. That is posted on August 12th. So it's been out for a little bit, but I just found it. Pretty cool. I'm going to add that to my recommended list on Substack. So that's pretty neat. Let's see what this is. Oh, yeah. So this is one of these wacky Catholic things that I've come across. And let me play this for you guys. Before I do, though, let me check this and see. Watch as Cardinal Pietro Parolin conducts a worship ceremony of the body parts of Saint Agatha. If you're wondering if Old Testament-style idolatry exists in the 21st century, look no further. Pointing out that the Catholic Church is satanic shouldn't be controversial. Just because you know good Catholics who are sincere doesn't change the fact that the institution has always been satanic. I would add, yeah, at the top, especially. The alliance with the Christian right to push back against the synagogue of Satan, meaning Zionism, is also a trap. So note what this guy's doing. This is, again, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. He's got a skull, and that skull is apparently the skull of Saint Agatha, which is who this sculpture is, right? So you can see that first he's got his hands on her head, and then he's got his hands literally on her head, on her skull, and then you see the crown. But that's all you see are those three pieces. Now here's the video. Watch as the cardinal conducts a worship ceremony over the body parts of Saint Agatha. They're calling this her relics. Her relics could be other things that she owned, I guess, but it's also could be her bones, and it's literally her skull in this case. Watch this. Yeah, no, that's not idol worship at all. Not idol worship at all, is it? No, I mean, he's just putting a skull in this, sculpture that's supposed to be Saint Agatha or whatever her name was, and even though it's her skull, putting a crown on top and then parading it around, and you're kind of worshiping it, I suppose, if you're there. Isn't that creepy and weird? So, welcome to Catholicism, I guess. Man, that's a weird one, if you ask me. Did he just kiss it? Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, and I had to look up, of course, who Saint Agatha even was. I had no idea. But apparently she was well, here, we can just look that up. She was a virgin and was apparently tortured. So let's go to the old Goog here real quick. Yeah, she was a martyr. Here we go. Share this tab. Agatha of Sicily. This was the woman whose skull we were just watching being inserted into the idol that wasn't idolatry. Agatha of Sicily was alive from 231 to 251 AD. So, 900 years. And they said that they celebrated the 900th year of her relics being part of the church, apparently. Agatha of Sicily is an early Christian virgin and martyr. They have a feast because she's an important figure. They have a feast for her on February 5th. It is considered the last date by which anyone can send New Year's greetings. Agatha was born in Catania, part of the Roman province of Sicily. We were just talking about Sicily earlier in this broadcast, weren't we? With Mount Etna exploding everywhere. And Catania. Now that's weird. Think there's any connection there? All right, and then Agatha of Sicily, born in Catania, was martyred in 251. She's one of several virgin martyrs who are commemorated by name in the canon of the Mass. Agatha is the patron saint of Catania, and some other places here. So I'm not sure why she was tortured and killed, but perhaps for her devotion to Christ. I don't know. Probably says here. Here, the festival of Saint Agatha in Catania. So that's kind of what we're watching there. There's the that's a similar idol, although I don't know if it's the same one. Very strange, huh? So, pretty creepy. Yeah, he's kissing the skull of Saint Agatha, which apparently is actually her real skull from 900 years ago. But I guess it's fine if the Catholic Church does it. I don't know. All right, and then we were talking about Israel a bunch tonight, so as we always do, rightfully so, Israel begins building an execution facility as Ben-Gvir's 30 to 40 a night remarks draw European condemnation. Yeah, it should draw condemnation from the entire world, but they're only talking about European condemnation. When he's talking about 30 to 40 a night, what he means is killing 30 to 40 a night people. Palestinians, I believe. Let me see here. Yeah, Gazans. Again, this is a website that's super pro-Israel, right? Israel365news.com. So it's approaching these type of articles from a, we have to support Israel no matter what standpoint, which I think is interesting to read just because you get their perspective on what they actually think is real and true, even though as a believer, hopefully we know the difference. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir announced this week the start of construction. This is for real. The start of construction on a dedicated execution facility. The start of construction on a dedicated execution facility for Palestinians sentenced to death under Israel's new death penalty law. Days after his comments calling for Israel to kill 30 to 40 Gazans nightly drew condemnation from Germany and Italy. Yeah, so if you're just putting a number out there, you're just basically saying killing random people is what it sounds like. In this article, it makes it sound like people who are guilty of something, which they can just say that they're guilty. There's no judge or jury or anything, right? They just say, you're guilty, you die. And that's pretty much it. Ben-Gvir visited the construction site on Tuesday and posted a video of the facility, which is currently under construction at an undisclosed location in central Israel. We promise and we are keeping our promises, Ben-Gvir said. I promise to worsen the conditions of terrorists in prisons. We kept it. I promised to pass the death penalty for terrorist law, and we did. And now the death row and hanging facility are also starting to take shape. I wonder where they're building the gas chambers. Where do you suppose they are? Because that's all that's missing, really. It seems to me like they would really need to have gas chambers to do it right. I think. Facility will include a dedicated wing for prisoners sentenced to death with gallows at its center. We'll be chopping their heads off at least. Good to know. And observation booths allowing victims and their families to witness the executions. So this is like double, triple torture here. Ben-Gvir, I wonder if they're going to hold their eyes open so that they watch. They're going to have like little toothpicks in the family's eyelids so that they're forced to watch their relatives get their heads chopped off or whatever, however they're going to do it. Ben-Gvir said the arrangement is customary in many countries, citing the United States as an example that the visitor permits would be granted to bereaved families. They just want to make this as absolutely miserable as possible. And of course, it's whoever they accuse of being a terrorist. It doesn't matter if they're actually a terrorist. You can imagine that they will pretty much be, if they're just saying we need to be killing 30 to 40 people a day or a night or whatever it says, 30 to 40 a night, then it doesn't matter who they kill. They're just going to start slaughtering everybody there and then making a spectacle out of it. If they have a spectacle that they're making out of it, then they'll probably also have a TV network based on this, I'm guessing. I mean, it's just think of the worst possible stuff, and that is what Israel will be doing. Mark my words. Anyway, all that to say, this is Ben Gvir, right? This is the guy we're talking about. He is the national security minister officially. And then this is an interesting story that came out earlier this week that's related. This guy, who is an international traveler, I think he's an American. He was traveling from Lebanon back to the U.S., and he does a lot of traveling in the Middle East. He was traveling back through Atlanta, I think he said. Yeah, so this guy, Ethan Levins, is a international traveler. He was traveling from Lebanon back to the U.S. through Atlanta. He was detained for the Department of Homeland Security for 3 hours. They didn't ask a single question about the United States. They only asked me about Israel and Ben Gvir. I'm an American. Why does the DHS care so much about protecting Ben Gvir? Again, the guy that we were just showing in that last article. He did a post back in April that mentioned Ben Gvir and where his office was located, apparently. So, like, he put a map or a screenshot or something in his post saying this is where Ben Gvir's office was. So they used that against this guy and stopped him and held him for 3 hours and was asking him all kinds of questions about his connection and what he knew about Ben Gvir. They didn't even know who Ben Gvir was, the people asking the questions, supposedly. But the point here is that he criticized an Israeli head of state on X, and then he got stopped at an airport and questioned and harassed about it, and he's an American citizen. So, something to look forward to, huh? Yeah, Ethan Levins 2 on X. He has some pretty good posts. He's actually like an independent news reporter. I've seen some of his other work. It's pretty good. He seems to know what he's talking about. And he's like an on-the-ground sort of reporter. He does the traveling and gets to these places and reports on things. So maybe there's some connection there too. I don't know. But he's saying that he was only asked about Ben Gvir in Israel. And he was not asked about anything else. And they held him for 3 hours. And anyway, he did finally make it back home. So pretty wild. Something to look forward to, huh? Maybe not. All right, we finally have a doom break. Just real quick before we go tonight. And these aren't really silly ones per se, but there's some, maybe one or two here that's a little wacky. But this one is probably more concern than a doom break. Report: more people have died from heat in France this summer than from all U.S. mass shootings in history. Is that good news? I don't know. Numbers don't lie. France has recorded over 7,300 excess deaths during heat waves this year, with a record 52 days of hot spells since mid-June. Separately, nearly 10,000 people across Germany have died so far this year due to heat-related causes. Yikes. Maybe all that global warming was dangerous after all. Well, what have we been saying on this show for many years? Basically saying what Mr. Dane says. What he says is right. And it's far worse than we're being told. I would just add the caveat that perhaps it's different than we're being told as well. So this article says at least 5,764 excess deaths were recorded from June 17th to July 2nd, and 1,243 in the July 3rd to 22nd period. They said from France in a statement on Wednesday, people aged 75 and over accounted for 3/4 of the deaths during the second heat wave. So they, I don't know, must not have air conditioning. I don't know exactly what the reason for that is, other than, yes, it is super hot. They must not have a way of staying cool over there. I don't know. Comparatively, the much ballyhooed mass shootings in the U.S. claimed the lives of far fewer people. More people died in France this year from not having air conditioning, there you go, 7,300, than American deaths from mass shootings in all of recorded U.S. history, 1,741. So there you go. If you're an American, something to be proud of. Turns out that the mass shootings have only killed less than 2,000 people. And France is pointing their fingers at us, and they've got 7,000 plus people dying from heat exhaustion. So there you go. Proud to be an American. There you go. This is funny. And I'm proud to be an American where at least I have AC, and I won't forget the HVAC guy that installed it for me. That is our new theme song. Forget the Proud to be an American song. That is funny. It's not funny, but it is funny. It's just totally ridiculous. All right, and then let's see here. This Not the Bee article is, this one's a little bit too close to home for me. I'll tell you why in a second. Nashville Hospital says they are deeply sorry after giving multiple patients the wrong medication, reportedly paralyzing 2 people with the mix-up. Yeah, and then there's a third person that's like in, maybe in a coma or something, I forget. This type of accident seems pretty inexcusable for a hospital. Patients at Ascension St. Thomas in Nashville went in for routine surgery, but the hospital accidentally injected them with potassium phosphate instead of anesthesia. Yikes. The hospital is blaming the issue on the in-house pharmacy. That makes sense. In Friday's statement, the hospital confirmed that the medication error happened in the hospital's pharmacy, and instead of receiving an injection of a common anesthetic in their spines, the four patients each received potassium phosphate, and then, as the hospital described it, experienced adverse health reactions and received immediate medical care. Yeah, but they're paralyzed. News Channel 5 investigates, which is a local, News Channel 5 locally here, I think is CBS, investigates, learned from 2 of the families that one patient, 72-year-old Glenda, was left paralyzed while a 74-year-old woman from Nashville was, at last word, on a ventilator. Okay, that's the other person. We don't know if she's paralyzed, but she's on a ventilator. Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying. Some of the writer asking about the hospital's DEI policy, because they've apparently been to a hospital in the last 15 years. It's a good question. Robbie Starbuck is a guy in Nashville here that I follow as well. He puts out good information. Willing to bet the responsible parties are DEI hires that wouldn't have met objective standards. Yeah, and then, now why would Robbie say something like that? It's not every business in the world, including hospitals, that have been infected with terminal DEI, right? Right? Let me tell you your paralyzed arse about your country and how it ... The most powerful women, Shabhata Jagasia, and this guy here as well. Yeah, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. More from Channel 5. Ascension St. Thomas also said in its statement that it had made several changes, quote unquote, to its pharmacy and safety protocols to prevent this type of mistake from happening again. Additionally, the hospital said it brought in outside experts to review and validate its correction plans. Yep, no one was fired. No one named responsible. Just a review of the pharmacy system in the hospital and their deepest apologies. And soon enough, a few multi-million-dollar lawsuits. I can guarantee that. Yeah, that is true. we mentioned this earlier. Horror. Multiple patients paralyzed at Nashville Hospital after pharmacy error leads to a drug mix-up. Star Wars names. That's why I said I didn't think of this, but that is exactly right. Shabhata Jagasia, Ascension St. Thomas, Vanderbilt University, Owen Graduate School of Management. So she's in charge. Congratulations to our leaders. So her, and then Fahad Tahir, President and CEO of Ascension St. Thomas, recognized on Nashville Post's In Charge 2025 healthcare list. So there you go. That's the leaders. That's the people who, I guess, are in charge. And why I said that it's a little too close to home for me. for this. It's not literally close to home, but this hospital is in Midtown. But Ascension St. Thomas Hospital is a pretty big network of hospitals in Nashville. And there is one out here in the area that I live in Nashville as well. And for the most part, they seem to be pretty good people, as far as I can tell. No major issues to be reported on my end. However, this is my mother's hospital. This is where she goes. So I'm just going to have to keep a sharp eye on these people. I mean, we read through the whole vaccination thing earlier on Revelation1823.net, and it just really, it really makes your ears perk up when you hear about stuff like this happening, as it should anyway. But when you have a direct connection to a hospital that is supposedly giving good care to your own mother, you definitely want to be paying attention. So anyway, very, very strange. Very strange indeed. And then let's see here. You see what this was. This was connected to that same story. Oh, this is the news. This is the news article. Multiple patients at Nashville Hospital are paralyzed after staff accidentally gave them the wrong drugs. The hospital says they're sorry about injecting potassium chloride into the spines of people getting routine joint replacement surgeries. Well, it was potassium phosphate, I think. So I don't know if it's the same thing or not, but yeah, they're sorry. That's all that matters. They're probably going to be real sorry, I'm guessing, when they get sued for hundreds of millions of dollars, which means that our medical costs will go up as well as a result of it, most likely. All right, and then this is the, I guess, more or less funny article on Not to Be tonight. We're almost to the point where we can call it a night. We're kind of running long again yet tonight, but that's all right. Worst aquarium ever review leads to merch sales surge at a whaling museum. So this is one of those things where you have to put your thinking cap on just a little bit here, if you're not familiar with this, called the New Bedford Whaling Museum. Okay, that last word is the key here. And the funny part about it is the review that they got. The New Bedford Whaling Museum in Massachusetts is cashing in on a viral bad review. The Google review was left by a disappointed guest back in 2020 who called the Whaling Museum, again, it's a museum, quote, the worst aquarium ever. Just leaving 1 star. It's got to give 1 star. Yeah, it's not an aquarium. It's a whaling museum. I mean, if you're expecting a dolphin show, this place would probably be a disappointment. But as a whaling museum, it seems legit. The vast majority of Google reviewers seem to agree, since it has a 4.8 stars overall. The hilariously bad review wasn't a recent one, but obviously the marketing department couldn't let the blistering review go, turning it into a product line, including shirts and tote bags. So here's the shirt. You have worst aquarium ever, quote unquote, with 1 star. And then their logo right next to it. It's on a bag as well. President and CEO of the museum, Amanda McMullen, told the AP they took a chance on something and obviously it hit. In just 1 week, the museum's sales soared 250% due to the viral merch. I hope the marketing team gets a nice bonus for that one. And maybe the person who left that review should get a little bit of credit too, since the museum did open up a brand new 250-gallon saltwater fish tank this year. Who's to say their review 6 years ago didn't inspire the update? And I guess Julia Roberts likes it. So I thought that was pretty wacky. Yeah, it's a whaling museum, not an aquarium. But that was the whole point of the whole thing. That's why it was funny. Anyways, just have a few more articles tonight, and then we can be finished up for the evening. So this is something I've mentioned, I don't know, not for a while, but definitely several times, because I just happened to be at Lake Mead, I don't know, when was that? January 1st or so of 2025. So it's been that long, year and a half. So this is the lake around the backside of Hoover Dam, right? Lake Powell has reached its lowest water level ever recorded, causing concerns for the 40 million people in two countries, the U.S. and Mexico, who rely on the Colorado River system, including residents of Arizona, California, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado. The lake's water levels fell to 3,519 feet above sea level, surpassing a previous record set in April 2023. And the troubling milestone at Lake Powell comes a week after Lake Mead, the river's other main reservoir, hit its own historic low. So this is something Dane's been talking about on his broadcast, off and on, pretty regularly. And at some point, they're going to hit the point where they can't really go down any further and be of any use to anyone. I think they've already had to shut down some of the electricity generation that the Hoover Dam does. This article says, if you add the two of these reservoirs together, the last time the joint contents were this low was in 1957, before there was even a Lake Powell. These are truly unprecedented. Jack Schmidt, a senior research scientist and the director of the Center for Colorado River Studies at Utah State University, told ABC News, we are in completely new territory. Colorado River supports 7 states' drinking water, and more than that, provides water for agriculture, municipal supply, and hydropower. Federal officials warned in April that a major intervention is required to prevent reaching the level where turbines would cease generating electricity by this year's end. They've already turned some of them off. That's what I'm saying. They've already turned some of those off. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation released a 10-year plan to manage the low water levels and potential drought impacts on Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Yeah, they're about to reach what they call Deadpool. I was looking to see if it mentions Deadpool here. I don't see it. Let's do a quick search here. This is something that Dayton talks about as well. I've never really looked it up, but it doesn't sound good. When a reservoir reaches Deadpool, which they are not very far from that happening, the water level drops so low that it can no longer flow downstream through a dam by gravity. Water becomes trapped in the lowest pockets of the basin, completely cutting off water supplies, stopping hydroelectric power, and drying up the riverbed below the dam. That is what they're close to. Now, that is not mentioned in that article, but that is something Dane talks about often. Yeah, yet they're pushing to approve a massive water-guzzling data center where the solar fields in Nevada are. Okay. Other side of Lake Mead, I believe. What are they doing? That was from Miss Emily. Let me post that comment here so you guys can see what we're talking about. They're pushing to approve a massive water-guzzling data center where the solar fields are in Nevada. Other side of Lake Mead, I believe. What are they doing? I know. It seems like they might want it to reach Deadpool and shut down. Yeah, I think it's called genocide. I think you're right. Little by little, they're just taking away everything. So, anyway, I wanted to let you guys know about Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Not good. It was real low when we were there, and that's been a while now. They're calling this the, what you can see on your screen here, the bathtub ring. That's kind of what it looks like. Look how high up it is. So they're way down. This picture was taken August 1st this year. The tall, bleached bathtub ring is visible on the rocky banks of Lake Powell on August 1st, 2026 in Page, Arizona. Yeah. So anyway, it is super low. That is bad news. All right, real quick look at climateeconomy.com, just the headlines. We'll see what they have here. A lot of this is stuff that Dane talks about on his radio show. Even even if he doesn't talk about an entire article, he'll oftentimes mention the headlines that are on this website, because anytime I talk to him, not anytime, but oftentimes when I talk to him, he will mention articles from this website to me. So I know he uses this site a lot. AI analysis reveals dramatic rise in global ocean algae blooms. So yeah, algae crisis deepens as local businesses and wildlife suffer. That's in Northern Ireland. Swimmers are being warned not to enter the water. First official bathing site on the River Thames in southwest London because of toxic blue-green algae in the water. Yeah. So we have a lot of these areas, I guess, in different bodies of water. Lakes, rivers, oceans, obviously. River salinization is widespread across Europe. So I guess turning salty, yeah, a salinity level well above international standards for the protection of aquatic life. Wow, so things are getting saltier? Certain bodies of water. Millions in France report eco-anxiety after summer of heat waves and wildfires. French farmers dip into winter fodder as drought leaves pastures bare. So they're already feeding some of their winter harvest, winter food that they would store up to their animals. Scorching summer triggers record rockfalls in the Alps. Monaco marine heat wave shatters records at sea temperatures stay above 28 degrees C for 39 days. 28 degrees C. I'm an American, so you have to explain it. 82 degrees. Wow. That is some warm water. 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Man. Extraordinary heat in Spain. Thunderstorms in Liguria. Trains struck by lightning and flooding, both in Giulio, which is in Italy, I guess. Wow. Germany, deadly storms, record heat in the Balkans, wildfires in Greece. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Sudan farms lie barren as El Nino leaves the Nile banks dry. Indian elephants are being squeezed out of their habitats. Yeah, it's just, it's so crazy how things are just getting worse every single week, it seems like. Philippines floods. Record heat in Indonesia. Wildfire smoke in Indonesia. So it goes on and on and on. No end in sight. Not until the good Lord comes back, I think. All right, GeoWatch for yesterday, August 22nd. Global Alert News, weaponized hellish heat. It's the name of this broadcast. Episode 576. Weaponized hellish heat. Parts of the West, Plains, and Texas are about to see record heat. Millions of Americans are facing heat alerts stretching from California to Florida. The world is on fire. True scale of devastating blazes wreaking havoc across the globe. And then there's this monumental deception from mainstream matrix media. This is a quote from the Wall Street Journal. Geoengineering will save us. Technology will thwart the doomsayers. End quote. Wall Street Journal report further stated geoengineering will be the answer. Really? After over 80 years of ongoing, expanding geoengineering operations, how's it going so far? With record-shattering heat and firestorms raging around the world? Question mark. Latest installment of Global Alert News, embedded right here. And got some other short videos below it that are linked as well. So this was broadcast out to the email list yesterday. So make sure you're on that list. You can join for free by just signing up, clicking this button. It takes you to the page about, I think it just asks for your email address. First and last name if you want to drop it in, but email address is all. And then you'll be on the list, and we will be able to impart Mr. Dane's information directly to your inbox. So yeah, make sure you're on that list, and totally free. You can sign up there, and then let's look at the scheduled weather, scheduled temperatures at least. August 29th through September 2nd. Mostly heat, a little below normal in a few places, northeast and extreme north, and then northwest. Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, where Mr. Dane is, right in here, a little bit below normal. So I'm sure that'll be a nice break. He's constantly telling me how hot it is there. So anyways, yeah, it's going to be hot, though, where I am, right here. And really warm if you're in Texas or in the in these other states around. Oklahoma as well, and New Mexico, pretty darn warm as well. So, but Alaska below normal. Wow. I guess the geoengineering planes will be active in the northwest as well as Alaska. And then if they're around where we are, at least in the southeast, you can bet they will be doing other things. But not cooling us off, that's for sure. All right. Was that it? I think that was it for me tonight. So I had a couple people donate recently to the cause of keeping this show on the air, and that's really helpful. Really appreciate that. So thanks you guys for helping. Buy Me a Coffee is what we're looking at right here. I usually try and post the full video of the final version of the show in here as well. So if you happen to ever visit the Diamond Disc page on there, you can access the latest video, the latest, at least the full show. I do embed it on there, and then you'll also find it on Subscribestar as well. And the show is embedded there. Looking to see. Yeah, here it is right here. Just scroll down a little ways. You'll see it. There's the show from last week and the week before, and so on and so on and so on. So they're all on here. And you can access those on Subscribestar, whether you're a subscriber or not. And if you are a subscriber, there are other little hidden gems and features that are included in your membership. And those are all available and detailed right here. Starting at $5 a month, you can help me pay the bills. So thank you guys for helping me do that. Just a very small handful. I was like 5 people, I think, on Subscribestar that's helping me pay the bills, and then a few people on Substack as well. And we'll look at that. That is right here. And you can sign up to be on the email list for free, and then it also has a mechanism for subscribing to help me pay the bills as well. So I really, really appreciate that. That is what Subscribestar is all about. And then also Substack. And then Substack, if you want, you can access everything just by simply going here and either putting your email address in and clicking subscribe, or just do no thanks. And it will take you right into the Substack posts that I put up each week, and the podcast and the links for the latest shows are usually over here on the left. And the newest post is right here in the center. So that stuff is available there. And then Linktree is where you'll find all the links to the show. Everything that has to do with the Diamond Report Live has the platforms that I'm on and the band group listed here as well. And feel free to join that. And Spotify and Apple, if you happen to want to be tuned in to the audio versions of the show that I will put up at some point. Could be tomorrow, might be Tuesday, as soon as I can get to it. So hi and welcome to everybody who's been hanging out tonight. We had Rumble rolling, and we had 2 YouTube channels and 2 Facebook pages and Telegram and Kick. So all of that going on. So lots of stuff. Anyways, thank you guys for being here tonight. The next show will be the 30th. Wow, the 30th of August. August 30th, 9 p.m. Central Time. That'll be the next show, the next Diamond Report Live. And in the meantime, we'll get some clips made of the show this week and post those this week as well. So if you guys can help me share those, it's free and easy thing to do and an easy way to help me do what I do. But thank you guys for being here tonight and for the blessings of your time and your presence being here in 3+ hours of broadcast. So hope you guys have a really blessed week this week and love you all and look forward to talking to you guys again real soon.